Peace and greetings to the East family. This is Our Light Network. I'm your host, Brother Majesty Montanez, here with our co-host, Brother Righteous. And today what we're going to talk about is how the mind is like a garden. So that's our subject. Before we begin that, we're going to talk about a little follow-up from our last live stream dealing with the other three ex-cops in the George Floyd situation and what happened, what's going on with that or whatever, because some people have been asking that. So we can start with that basically. And before we start, I'm going to shout out last week's winner of the free book, It Works, which was Tyrone Sumter out of Connecticut. So he's the one who got the book for everybody else who emailed us. Just so y'all know, that's who the winner is. So I put his name up on the screen. All right, so now let's just cover this first segment really quick, and then we're going to get into our main topic. Your mind is like a garden. So let's cover this because some people were asking us, yo, what happened with the three ex-cops? Are they going to go to trial or whatever since they convicted Derek Chauvin or whatever, right? So they were asking about that. So basically, long story short with that whole thing, there's three cops, three other ex-cops, right? They were charged in the death of George Floyd. Now, the three cops, one is J. Alexander Quang or something like that, Thomas Lane, and Tao Thao, right? So these are the other, three ex-cops charged. So basically what's going on with that is that they go to trial this August. So basically they still got to go to trial. They just separated trials. So that's probably telling you also that maybe they were given information, you know what I'm saying, against Derek Chauvin or whatever the case may be. So out of those three cops or those three ex-cops, basically what they're charged, what the charge of all of those officers is aiding and abetting second degree unintentional murder, second degree manslaughter. The same thing Chauvin was convicted of. That's what these three officers are charged with, but aiding, you know what I'm saying, not doing it. So as far as Derek Chauvin, his sentencing is going to happen in June. So that's when he goes back to court and everybody's going to find out how much time he was sentenced to. Now with the other three cops, like I said, what you're dealing with is two out of those three cops were rookies. So that's another thing. If I don't know if the majority of the viewers follow that whole situation or not, but they were rookie cops, and basically the whole thing started off bad because the cop whose name is Thomas Lane, he's the dude that if you saw the footage, whether it's real or fake or whatever the case may be, he's the one who drew his gun on George Floyd after the store owner called the police about George Floyd using the counterfeit $20 bill or whatever. So the whole situation started off bad to begin with, and then when they subdued this dude, George Floyd, put him in the car and all of that, he was resisting arrest. They took him out the car, put him on the ground. The dude Chauvin had his knee on his neck, but the other cops involved, they two of them, which was Quang and the dude Lane. One of them is he looks like he's a mulatto or could be black or whatever for the record, and the dude Thao, he's of Asian descent or whatever. So anyway, they held down Floyd's legs, his body when Chauvin had his knee on Floyd's neck and all of that. So the only one of those dudes that's not a rookie cop, I'm saying out of the other three, is the dude Thao, which is the dude of Asian descent, and he was a cop since 2012. So if you follow this on CNN or any of these mainstream stations, you'll get basically the same information that I just told you. So the dude Thao, the cop who was of Asian descent, he was not a rookie. He was a cop since 2012. And then he had 6 complaints filed with internal affairs, you know what I'm saying, for police misconduct. 5 of those got dismissed and 1 is still open, besides this one dealing with George Floyd. Um so it's not looking good for them dudes, you know what I'm saying? But they just aiding and abetting what Chauvin did, basically. That's their charge. So once individuals find out in August, when Chauvin is sentenced, when they find out what he's sentenced to, that'll give you a better idea of what the other 3 cops are going to be sentenced to, because it would be aiding and abetting in that. So the dudes that are rookies, the 2 of the 3 ex-cops that are rookies, um, they'll probably like get a light ass sentence, to be honest with you,
Yeah, they're
because they
gonna get a
would
slap
like
on the
literally,
wrist.
yeah, they were literally like rookie cops, bro. And then one of them is caught on the camera saying, "Yo, we should put him on his side." You know what I'm saying? We shouldn't be subduing him this type of way, even though the same dude was holding his legs down. You know what I'm saying? At the same time for the 9 minutes. But so he might get even more of a slap on the wrist, because they could show on camera that he's like, damn, maybe this ain't a good idea. He's already saying he's out of breath. You know what I'm saying? He's calling for his moms and all that shit. So anyway, so that's the situation with that. Because individuals ask about it. If you want to give something on it, bro, you could do that, and then we'll go
Yeah.
into our main segment.
Based off of my particular experience with law enforcement, uh, the reason why I say that the 2 rookie cops are gonna probably get a slap on the wrist is because when you work in law enforcement, it's a bit challenging when you come in as a rookie because you have these seasoned officers basically who
Right,
they have their way of working, they have their way of doing stuff. So it's kind of like you following their lead, but as you go on, you start to develop your own system of how you want to like police or be a correction officer or whatever. And
right,
so even though like you might come in with a conscience, right? Like the cop was saying, hey, we should put him on the side. Like you come in like, yo, this ain't right. But at the same time, it's like we got this veteran officer who's doing it, so maybe like I should follow suit because I don't really
right,
want to go against the blue code. This is a blue code of silence with
right,
officers. If y'all don't know that, basically
right.
meaning that they're not gonna snitch
Definitely.
on each other, they're not gonna tell each other they got each other's back, even if the officer is
Uh-huh.
wrong, and they'll
Right,
settle the score behind the curtains, behind the doors, basically meaning that if my fellow officer does something wrong, I don't reprimand him or chastise him in front of people. I do it behind closed doors. But
right,
at that moment, I got his back, even if he is in the wrong, basically. So those officers, the 2 rookies, are likely to get a lighter sentence just off the strength of that. They understand how that particular
right,
how that arena of law enforcement officials, how it works, basically, or what
right,
the culture is like. That's what I really wanted to say. So the other dude, the Asian guy, he's probably gonna his sentence won't be as heavy as the Chauvin character, but um he's definitely gonna get a sentence because he was amping it up. You know what I'm saying? So y'all just pay
right,
attention, look out for that, and also do your due diligence when you out on the street. Don't give these cops a reason, no reason at all, yo. You know, it's better to take them to court than to lose your life. Always, you know what I'm
fact,
saying? Even if that means you got to go to jail for a couple hours. I'm not saying that it's right. I'm not saying that they should get away with it, but it's a different way we got to start handling and different dealing with with the police. You know what I'm saying? Don't give them a reason for nothing. And that's just my spill on that. So we could go ahead and jump on today's topic.
all right, dope. All right, so right before we get into today's topic, pardon me. We got a question from one of the viewers. So since we was too busy to answer it through email, because we get a lot of emails, I'm gonna just address it really quickly. This is a question from one of our viewers and subscribers, who goes by the name HDD. You know, just as far as the subscriber name, HDD. He says he gave a whole spiel about his job and things like that, and how his job is not fulfilling. So I'm not gonna read all of that stuff. But he says, I struggle when it comes to finding or knowing my purpose. As humans, do we have pre-subscribed purposes given by the divine, or is my purpose self-prescribed? Does Masonry say anything on this? Help! Laughing out loud, right? So I would say this is I would say this as far as purpose. That's a very good question, because
It
you'll
is.
meet so many 50, 60-year-olds in life, even 70-year-olds sometimes, and people maybe even older than that, who don't have they don't, if you ask them that question, yo, what is your life's purpose? They can't give you an answer. And sometimes it'll shock them, like, damn, I never thought about that. What am I here for? So that's an excellent question. I'll say this: objectively, when you're studying the universe from an objective perspective, not projecting your subjective beliefs onto the universe, you know, or the world that you see outside of yourself, but just looking at it for what it is, using reason and analyzing life from that perspective. Um, Objectively speaking, the purpose of life on this earth is very clearly procreation and evolution. That's just from the objective perspective. That's very clear, scientifically sound. All animals mate, you feel me, and reproduce. Same thing in the vegetable kingdom. The plants, etc., they reproduce. So we'll see that type of thing in the Bible, esoterically speaking, when it says that the gods said to man, quote unquote, be fruitful and multiply. So that's obvious. And then we look at the scheme of evolution, and we see down from the mineral kingdom to the vegetable kingdom to the animal kingdom. You see a progression there, no question about it. Most creatures share approximately 50% the same DNA. So that shows us we're connected. You could look at the animal kingdom and see, oh shit, animals have eyeballs, man. They have ears, they have mouths, they have noses, etc. They have the five senses like the human does. The human is part of the animal kingdom. So when you study the universe objectively, you'll see that there's definitely a scheme of evolution going on, where when the animal kingdom evolved, I mean, amongst the animals in the animal kingdom, pardon me, when man came into the scheme of evolution, you see that you have a creature that can know itself to be God, or to know itself to be the universe. That takes place through our meditation, you know, our whole practice of Freemasonry, alchemy, whatever spiritual path we're practicing. So that's the objective scheme of things. So that tells you what our purpose is as a whole, as humans, to multiply and evolve, right? That's the objective truth. Now, when the brother asked about personal, you know, self-prescribed purpose, that is subjective. It's what you make it, my brother. So you have the power to make meaning, but it's valid for you on a subjective level. It doesn't mean don't do that. Like, some people find their purpose um, to be the greatest car salesman who ever lived, and that's beautiful. That's a subjective purpose. You can't tell a man that has no meaning. It has no meaning objectively, because that's not the objective purpose of life. But it can fall into the scheme of the objective purpose of life, because cars make life better. Social media has the potential to make life better in the grand scheme of evolution. It does. But again, yes, your own purpose as the individual, when you find that balance, you have to make that. And if that thing fulfills you, it's it's best if it's in line with the objective purpose of human life. That would be best if it's harmonious. But in any regard, it's what you make it, my brother. So you gotta find that for yourself. I kind of understand that the brother may be applying that to like synchronicity, like me and Brother Righteous was talking about synchronicity earlier. There's little events that happen in your life, and you start to see they're all interconnected, and you start to ask yourself, "Damn, do I actually have a personal purpose? Like, damn, I have this talent or I have this skill." But when you really analyze everything, you'll see that everything that happens in nature is a result of cause and effect, causality, which is a fact of nature, and it's a hermetic principle. It's not, things are not just happening. For every cause, there's an effect. For every effect, there's a cause. You know what I'm saying? So when you think deeper upon it, you'll realize why it is you have certain talents and things like that. You know. But yeah, I I would say your personal purpose is definitely self-prescribed. You have to create that for yourself and make meaning. And it's not about what other people think about it. That's the subjective part. You know what I'm saying? That's what you make it. Don't. In my opinion, you shouldn't let anybody tell you that if you want to be the greatest poet, and poetry doesn't make money, which it really doesn't for the most part. That just because it doesn't, that shouldn't be your own personal purpose. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know, brother Righteous got something to say on that, and then right after this, we'll get into the main topic for sure.
So yeah, I want to second that motion. I was laughing when I heard the question, not because I think it's funny, but I'm interested in that. When I deal with my clients, that's a question that comes up a lot. You know, do humans have a purpose? And the one thing that you got to do, obviously, you have to dedicate yourself to profound study. But also, you got to spend a lot of time just thinking about things and watching, observing. So
Right.
what I do for myself is I observe humanity. Like when I go outside, if I'm traveling to work, I just
Hmm.
watch people and I start to ask myself certain questions about these particular things, like why does this matter to humanity? Because
Right.
when you start from the complex, right? We have cell phones and pens and headphones and different little things. When you start from these complexities and you take it back to the basics,
Right.
a form of basics would be what does humanity need, right? Food, clothing, and shelter. That's the basics. But then outside of that, um, when you look at what your divine purpose is, like Brother Majesty mentioned, is to be fruitful and multiply, basically to procreate and to evolve and expand. And we have been doing that. If you've been following the channel, especially since we've been doing the videos together, we've been basically like bringing you from ancient Kemet, and you can, if you look at their culture and where we are today, definitely we are evolved, and they were advanced too. But where we are today, you can tell that the human has evolved, and we are still evolving at
Hmm.
faster rates, if you will.
Yeah.
Now, in terms of your subjective realities, like he said, like Brother Majesty mentioned, your purpose is what you make it. So, like, you'll have different experiences. Like for instance, for me, when I was a child, somebody introduced writing lyrics, writing rhymes. I was like
Hmm.
10 years old, and that became a part of who I was. Now, I'm not here to say that my purpose is to be the best lyricist in the world. That's something that I'm making true, basically. Or my
Hmm.
purpose is to be the best lyricist in the world, to give music to people, to teach them how to be a better them, or to teach you how to be
Hmm.
a better you. But that's a purpose that I created, basically. How I look at it is this: the only true purpose of humanity is to realize and discover that you are God and God is you. And so
Right.
And my video that I did, I have a video that I'm uploading later today, and it's an
Yeah.
inspirational video, and it just speaks about the consciousness of God. The
Hmm.
whole purpose is for you to realize what you are. You are the
Hmm.
microcosm to the macrocosm, but at the same
Right.
time, you are a macrocosm to another microcosm.
Right.
And on that, I spoke about in order for you to even contribute to the macrocosm, you got to fix the microcosms within yourself. You have to create the purpose within yourself to understand how to even be to begin to understand the purpose that you serve higher. What I'm saying is there's a God is a body, and the different humans make up this particular body, and we're realizing that we're recognizing, oh snap, yo, we're a part of this divine nature, this divine force, this thing,
Right.
this the universal mind, if you will, like the Kabbalion states. So
Hmm.
in those regards, that's how I would basically lay it down for the question that he asked about purpose. So
Right.
but yeah, that's my spill on that.
Definitely. And that, of course, that ties into the whole scheme of evolution, without question. So that definitely makes sense. All right, so we're gonna get into our main topic, and for all the viewers and subscribers, go to Brother Righteous's other podcast. At some time within the week or within the month, Solar Masters Ascending. It's on the screen, and then you go there and subscribe there. You there, and you can check out some more deep wisdom. So now we're gonna get into our main subject. Your mind is like a garden. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna see if we bring another brother on, and we're gonna build upon the subject, right? Your mind is like a garden. So part of what we're gonna deal with as far as this teaching here is gonna be one of the three great lights of masonry, the Bible, right? If you're a student of the mysteries, you know the Bible is esoteric, it's symbolic. It's not a literal book. So we're gonna go into that. And we're gonna talk about the importance of this teaching, why and how your mind is like a garden, how you could use this knowledge to accomplish what you want in life, right? So we're gonna have to break down, some of the terminology a little bit, and then we'll build as we progress with it. So um, let me first go to a passage in the Bible. You could give your thoughts, Brother Righteous, while I pull up these different passages.
Uh, so I first got a grip on this particular concept uh, sometime last year, and I heard Earl Nightingale speak about this.
Hmm.
And like most of the time, like when I'm listening to stuff, or I'm listening to like motivational speakers and stuff like that, they say things that'll blow your mind. Earl Nightingale does these videos where, um, well, excuse me, let me say that properly. He doesn't do videos. The Bible channel, which is what I watch, they'll upload some of his audio. They'll put it to some video, put the audio together, and you can listen to him. Like that's how I heard "As a Man Thinketh." That was the first time I ever heard it. Like the mention
Right.
of the book was, I was working construction, and one of the brothers in construction told me to get the book, but I actually heard the audio on the Vibo channel. So Earl Nightingale did one called "The Strangest Secret in the World," and on that he speaks about how the mind is like a garden, and he goes
Uh-huh.
into the spill about how what you plant, what you reap, and what you sow. Like you getting ready to go into and
Right.
read. You got the scriptures up?
Yeah. And
All right, all right.
see if hit up the brother and see what's going on with him.
He said he'll be on in 30. So
Oh, in 30 minutes.
yeah,
All right.
he
So
said he
yeah.
sent a
So that.
message. Yeah.
All right. So that's good. That gives us enough time to lay the groundwork. All right. So If you've been studying anything just dealing with this, the secret Bible, right? That'll help you out to understand. It lays out for you how the Bible is symbolic, how you could prove it's symbolic, so on and so forth. So keep that in mind as we go into this. So we're going to start off with a certain parable that's given in the book of Proverbs, right? And it's going to be Proverbs chapter 24, verses 30 to 34, right? This is set the stage, and we'll go into this, the semantics, the symbolism of the wordplay. And again, we'll talk about how to apply this knowledge. All right, so it says, I went by the field of the lazy man and by the vineyard of the man devoid of understanding. And there it was, all overgrown with thorns. Its surface was covered with nettles. Its stone wall was broken down. When I saw it, I considered it well. I looked on it and received instruction. A little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to rest. So shall your poverty come like a prowler, and your need like an armed man, right? So basically, let me introduce a couple of words, right? Because the whole thing is this: in order to understand the symbolic teaching, dealing with how the mind is like a garden and how the ancient mysteries use the analogy of the mind being like a garden, you have to understand some things about gardening. Otherwise, the analogy is going to go over your head. You're not going to be able to grasp the metaphor. Like, I think recently we were talking about some Tupac thing with the song Me and My Girlfriend, you know what I'm saying, which is a classic. And a lot of people will hear that song today if they listen to Tupac, and it'll go over their head that the song is a metaphor about his gun. It's not about his girlfriend at all or his wife. He's being metaphorical, right? But if you have no knowledge of guns, you're not going to get that. It's going to go over your head. You know what I'm saying? All of his analogies are going to go over your head. So it's the same thing with this. So let me bring up a couple of words that we have to be familiar with really quick, and that are also used in this verse. Some of the, in the passage I just read, some of these words. Okay. You have a word called sow, right? To sow. It's a verb. Like if you've ever heard the phrase, you reap what you sow. That's an analogy dealing with gardening, right? So to sow is a verb. To sow means to plant the seeds of a crop or harvest. So sowing means planting seeds, basically, to grow something, to produce something. To reap which reap is also a verb. To reap means to cut and gather a crop or harvest. So keep that in mind, because Freemasonry has this symbolism too, and we'll get into that as we progress. Okay. Thistle, if you ever see that word, Thistle, right? Look that up, brother, right? Just the word thistle. So we could go in.
Let me get my dictionary.
Yeah. Otherwise, like I said, the analogies will go over brothers and sisters' heads.
All right. Said thistle.
Yeah.
All right. So this is,
Thi.
I'm
Go
using the
ahead, bro.
Oxford American Dictionary for the viewers to see, and inside of this dictionary, thistle is defined as a prickly plant with the purple, white, or yellow flowers.
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy
All
because I've
right. So
actually seen that. I got an
right.
app on my phone too with a dictionary, so I could look up some more definitions too.
All right. Cool. So you see how it mentions the prickly, thorny aspect, right, of that form of plant life, right? So pay
Mm-hmm.
attention to that. Just think when you hear that word thistle, just even though it represents a prickly, thorny plant or whatever, just think in terms of thorns, right? Just think in terms of that. All right. Look up the word nettles because that was used there too in the passage.
Nettle, like
Nettles.
okay.
Nettles.
Alright. So
I remember as we go into this, like I said, the ancient mysteries use this analogy of gardening, comparing a garden to the mind. Even in the Bible, when we hear about the Garden of Eden or we read about that, that's symbolic. It's dealing with this. But we'll get deeper. Go ahead, bro.
so nettle, a common wild plant with hairs on its leaves that sting and redden the skin when they are touched. Definition number two, a plant resembling this.
Hmm.
To sting with nettles, to irritate, to provoke, to annoy. An eruption
Right. So
on the
that's
skin with red
right.
patches, those made by little nettle
Right. So
stings.
that yeah. So that's becoming more figurative. The last couple of definitions, right?
Okay.
Which relates to the literal definition. All right. So that's what the word nettles means, and then you have the word vineyard. So for individuals who may not know, a vineyard is a plantation of grapevines. So it's a field in which you grow grapes. And of course, you use grapes to make wine. So vineyard is dealing with that aspect of gardening. You're not growing grapes. So keep those things in mind. And I'll read this particular parable from Proverbs again, right? So it's important we covered that, what we just went through. All right. So again, in Proverbs, remember the Bible is speaking symbolically. It says, I went by the field of the lazy man. The field is dealing with, again, where you're going to grow your garden, and that's dealing with the mind. And we'll get into exactly which aspects of the mind you have to understand in order to apply this knowledge. I went by the field of the lazy man and by the vineyard of the man devoid of understanding. So that means a person who has no understanding, who's lazy, right? And there it was, all overgrown with thorns. Its surface was covered with nettles. Its stone wall was broken down. When I saw it, I considered well. That means I pondered, right? I looked on it and received instruction. A little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to rest. So shall your poverty come like a prowler, and your need like an armed man. So basically, what it's telling you there is that's just a parable saying the lazy man's mind, the mind of the lazy man, the man um who gets nothing out of life, right? His life is one of just laziness. His mind can be likened to a field that has nettles in it, right? It's it's a there's no you don't want to raise a plant like that is the point.
Right.
That type of plant bears no fruit is the point if it has thistles or nettles. There's no fruit there. You can't pick nothing from it, is the point. You can't pick no fruit that's useful. So the parable is comparing the mind of the lazy man who is devoid of wisdom, who's devoid of understanding. Basically, in short, it's telling you there that your mind is like a garden. He says, I pondered that and I received instruction. So basically, that parable is telling you your mind is like a garden, treat it accordingly.
Mm.
If you want to produce fruit in life, you got to put the work in. You got to make sure your field, which is your mind, you got to make sure it's right. Right? So we're going to get deeper into some more of those comments. So I'm going to read this passage too, because this is a good one. Right? And it's going to deal with, again, how to apply this knowledge. But we just want to make it clearer as far as understanding just the symbology that this involves. All right, so we're going to read Matthew chapter 7, verse 15 to verse 20. Right? All right. So it says this is dealing with the character Jesus Christ, who in Freemasonry as well as the ancient mystery schools in our modern times symbolizes you. Jesus Christ is a character in a fairy tale, basically. You know what I'm saying? But he represents what you could be.
Right.
And what nature intends us to become eventually through evolution, like we talked about before. All right, so it says, it says that Jesus said, "You will know them by their fruits," right? Meaning Jesus said, "You," and again, Jesus is a character, but he says, "You will know people." Basically, you will know them by their fruits. Do men gather grapes from thorn bushes, or figs from thistles? So we already dealt with what that word thistle means.
Right.
So he says, do men gather grapes from thorn bushes or figs from thistles? What he's telling you is don't think. Remember, we're using this analogy of the mind being like a garden. So he's telling you, let's say if a person was literally a gardener, would they expect to reap grapes from something thorny? Grapes grow on a grapevine. They don't have thorns on it. So he's saying if you putting out a certain type of energy, this will help you to understand it better. There's a law of nature called like produces like. I got to throw that in there because it'll help us to better understand that parable. Like produces like is a law of nature. So if you look at nature, do you take a cat and mate it with a dog and expect to get children from it? No. Species can only breed with their own species to produce life. That's a law of nature. And this goes back to what we were saying recently, just dealing with the human race, which I would rather say the human species. We're one species. We're not different. The race thing is really a fallacy. It's not scientifically correct. There's not different human races.
Right.
There's just one species, the human species, so we can mate with each other. Any human from any ethnicity or any so-called race, if they're different races coming together, they could produce. So that tells you like produces like. If you want to grow an orange tree, you have to make oranges. That's what you have to do to get those seeds. You're not going to, so that's what it's telling you. Like produces like. So he says, with a gardener produce grapes with thistles. No, grapes ain't going to grow from that type of a tree. And that type of tree is not useful, or that plant rather is not useful. It's thorny. So he's telling you something about your mind. He says, a good tree cannot bear bad fruit, nor can a bad tree bear good fruit. So he's giving you this analogy of like produces like. Don't think a certain way. Don't plant certain seeds in your mind and expect a result that's not in accordance with that. Right? And we'll gain a deeper understanding as we progress. He said, every tree that does not bear good fruit is cut down and thrown into the fire. Think about that. Because there's also a parable where he burns down a fig tree, the character Jesus, and they like, why the hell did you burn down the fig tree? And it deals with what the character just said right there. Every tree that doesn't produce fruit is cut down. That's what a gardener would do, bro. Do you think if you were a gardener, you would sit and grow some bullcrap ass tree that doesn't produce fruit? You're gonna get it up out of your garden, you know? And the mystery schools work the same way. You got to be active. You can't not be active and think you're gonna stay in the organization. That's a lot of that social media pretendo stuff that goes on. Like we be talking about, fake alchemists, you got fake masons, you got all type of pretenders. But a tree is known by its fruit. So if there ain't no fruit being born, what does that tell you? And every tree that doesn't produce is cut down by the gardener. So it's the same way in the mystery schools, and it's the same way in nature. Pay attention to that. You can't escape the law. That's the law of correspondence in Hermetic philosophy. If you produce nothing in this life, what happens? You can't evolve, man. It's bottom line. Nature is gonna cut you down. So in those particular passages there, he's given the analogy of, like I said, how the mind is like a garden. And you get some of your thoughts on it, brother, because there's a few more passages we got to go into. Then we're gonna compare it to Freemasonry. Brother Wahid to come on and give his wisdom, and he's gonna go in. You know what I'm saying? I already know.
So,
But we just laying groundwork at this point.
right. So I want to bring up that point of the strangest secret in the world, because like I said, this was the first time that I heard this particular concept
Dealing with
dealing with the mind.
brother Earl Nightingale, you talking about?
Yeah, Earl Nightingale, when he spoke about the mind, and what
Hmm.
he mentioned is what you plant in your mind. See, your mind is the garden. Your mind is
Right,
the land, basically. And what you plant inside of it, the universe will give back to you, basically.
right,
So to break it and put it in its most simplest form is, all right, if your mind is the garden, this is the grass, you have to till the soil, basically, which means prepping your mind to
right.
receive this, whatever you
Uh-huh.
about to plant inside of it. So they till the soil, basically. Earl Nightingale mentions how you can plant a seed that's going to produce poisonous vines or weeds, or you can
Hmm.
produce something that's going to bear fruit.
Right.
The universe doesn't care what you plant inside of it. All it's going to do is return back whatever you put inside of it, because
That.
that's how nature works.
That.
So what that correlates to, or what that is alluding to, is what you put inside of your mind, whether it's negative or positive, what you plant inside of your garden, it has no choice but to give back whatever it is that you plant. So this is the
Right.
reason why I'm so big on, when I tell people about the music that they listen to, or the type of things that they watch, that's a part of your diet. You're feeding
Hmm.
what we call a subconscious mind, or you're feeding your soil. So you
Right.
can't expect for you to have the best life experience if all you've done has, or if all you have been doing is planting poison in your mind and feeding
Hmm.
poison into your body, basically.
Right.
You can't expect to have a better life. And this goes according to every aspect, especially for those of us who identify as Black or African American or Amerindian. This is primarily for us in America. The message needs to get across to us, because we are the ones who are basically suffering the most, and we're used the most. Like, for instance, to give a quick example, this
Hmm.
guy Joe Biden has said that he wrote the crime bill. He was like, I'm the author of it. He takes full ownership of it. And we understand what that has done to a lot of the families
Yeah. Not
across
trying to be
America.
funny. Keep that in mind. Not trying to be funny, bro, but you notice that this dude is trying to pass a bill to ban Newports. Like, why would it have to be Newports if you know that most people that smoke Newports are non-Caucasians?
I didn't know that. I did not know that.
Most people, yeah, this is recent, but it's not of any concern. It's just hilarious, bro, because he's like, yo, my supporters, why would you want to ban Newports? Most Americans smoke Marlboros, especially when it comes to Caucasians. That's
Right.
statistically what it is. I smoke Marlboros personally, you know what I'm saying? And you got some blacks, quote unquote, who smoke Marlboros. But for the most part, Puerto Ricans, blacks, people that are non-Caucasian usually smoke Newports, menthol. And then he's put a bill out now to try to ban it, you know what I'm saying? And to also try to ban flavored cigars, you know what I'm saying? Like the Black and Milds, dipped in wine and all of that type of stuff. But go ahead though, bro. The Sleepy Joe image always comes in my mind when I hear things about the president. Shout out to our
Nah, so
president too, man. Go ahead.
um I didn't know that. But again, there's a video of Dr. Umar Johnson, right? For those of you who deal with him. I watch all of the stuff in our community because at one point in time I was associated with it. But I have the ability to take the good and leave the bad. Meaning that I could
Hmm.
watch somebody who has went through a life of hardship, drugs, all of that, and still take value from their life and what they're teaching. So Dr. Umar
Hmm.
Johnson, he probably has his challenges and people be knocking him, but he go hard for the community. And he
Hmm.
mentions how not one bill has been passed in favor of the so-called community, the black community that has voted for him. He basically wrote a bill, a crime bill, to lock our people up. Now, why am I
Hmm.
bringing this up? This is in correlation to what we think about ourselves.
Okay.
And the presidents are basically mirror reflections, or this economy are mirror reflections of what's taken on inside. How?
Right.
Let's use this COVID-19 to explain it. COVID-19 was basically showing how humanity is sick, basically. And those of
Hmm.
us who understand, who are healthy physically and mentally, we weren't necessarily affected by COVID-19 in the same way in the same way that
I'm
the
playing with
same
you, bro. Go ahead.
way,
Speak
the same
speak
way
your truth, brother.
your
Speak
average
your truth,
individual
man.
was. So basically, like my frustrations weren't necessarily like, oh my God, people are dying and they're killing people. That wasn't my frustrations. My frustrations were coming from
Bro, Matt,
how the
yo, bro, imagine this is gonna be step two. This is gonna be phase 15. You see how you do it, like cats be in the car driving. I'm not driving with a mask on, but I don't knock certain dudes because they may be doing certain
right, right.
underhanded
I got yeah.
activities, and it's good to cover your face while you're driving if you're doing that. But phase 15 is probably going to be us doing podcasts. I'm saying YouTubers in general like this, bro. That's how silly it might get. You feel me? No physical contact, but we still got the mask on. But go ahead, bro.
It's absurd, but again, like what I'm trying to say is like my frustration was more so how the hell don't people see what's going on? Because as a
Uh-huh.
Mason, and even before I joined the order, I was a free thinker. And you have to be a free thinker to be a part of this, a part of Blue Majestic in particular, or any
Right.
co-Masonic order. So,
Hmm.
much respect to all of the orders out there. But the point
Right.
that I'm trying to make is this was a representation of how sick humanity is. That's all it was. And it was an experiment, basically. So
Hmm.
now, for me, I was able to take a step back and look and say, damn, people sick, man. And they don't even realize that they're sick. There was
Right.
the brother outside my house or whatever. When I'm outside, I breathe nature. I breathe the good air because I understand that's the most healthiest thing that I could do. The other
Right.
brother didn't have a mask on either. But in between us, there was a guy with a mask on, and they was dapping each other up. But he said something to him. He said, "Yo, my brother, man, how long you gonna live in this mental slavery?" And then the dude reached out to shake his hand. The dude with the mask reached out to shake the brother's hand. He
uh,
was like, You sure you want to touch me? Because I
Right,
see they
right,
got your mind. So
right.
I look back at the brother, and he was like, you see this man? His mind is going. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what to say. But those of us who know, we know, right? But this is what we has been planted in your mind. I don't want you to feel like I'm digressing
Bro,
from the point. It's
yeah. And I'm
it's
not
all
trying to be funny,
correlated.
bro. Yeah, it's gotten so bad. You could be having an escapade with a woman, like a strange woman, an escapade, quote unquote. Like this. She's like this, bro. She's like this. And you going up in that raw. You feel me? And it's like, what people are weird, bro. Like what you see the irony of that, bro?
Yeah.
Like what you
I
said with
mean,
the shaking the hands. You know what I'm saying?
yeah, because it's
But
like
but
in the
let
same token, yeah,
yeah, let's try to keep to that analogy and all of that. And then when the brother comes on, like I said, I know he gonna put his thing down. Um, of because you had mentioned weeds, right?
right,
And it's still in
right,
line with what you're saying or whatever. We not swerving from what you're talking about now. Um, and for individuals who may not know, because we can't take it for granted that everybody understands the dynamics of gardening. Like we're city men, quote unquote, us particularly. We know this type of stuff, but we damn well know a lot of people from major cities don't know the first thing about gardening or planting anything. You know what I'm saying? Our southern brothers and sisters probably understand better.
right,
Cultivating the land, you know what I'm saying, to grasp the metaphors. Um, but you had mentioned weeds, and for individuals who may not know, when you making sure your soil is right to plant something, part of what you got to do is tear up weeds. So weeds in the soil, if the soil is not taken care of, weeds grow like they spread like wildfire. And what they'll do is they'll
yep,
choke your plants. Like once you plant whatever it is you're planting and it starts to grow up, the weeds will choke it, it'll kill it. So when the brother mentioned the weeds, I would say you could liken the weeds to those mental paradigms or habitual
yes,
patterns in your
yes,
subconscious that will choke out whatever it is you say you want to accomplish. That's great. You see how a lot of
right,
people be like, yo, I'm trying to use the law of attraction and this, that, and the third, or they'll get on Facebook or Instagram and they'll give you all of these positive quotes, but you'll know them and their life is always in shambles. And it's like you're not doing a good job at planting the seeds. You're not doing
yep,
a good job because they're not producing. But if they take the advice you just gave, same as the advice that the character Jesus gives, but you use weeds and he used thorns. Um, what it is you trying to manifest or plant into your subconscious to grow is getting choked out by the
exactly,
weeds of your mind. So put it this way, those don't get caught up in the words negative and positive because that's relative. In science, negative doesn't mean bad and positive
right,
doesn't mean good. Morality is subjective. It has no objective reality. Positive manifestations of energy deal with passive energy. Excuse me. Positive manifestations of energy deal with active energy. Negative manifestations of energy deals with passive energy. Those things are synonymous. So when you're dealing with energy in terms of physics, you have positive manifestations and negative manifestations of energy. But do
so
not equate that with good and bad as far as
so
with the weeds.
so the point to be understood from that is you have to always tend to your land. You have to always tend to your plants, to your fruit, or whatever it
Fact.
is that you're planting. Because if you don't, like the brother mentioned, the weeds will choke your plant out. And you got to remember the plants are symbolic of your thoughts, of the things that you plant into your subconscious mind, the truths that you want to reveal itself, basically. So when you plant these particular trees, when you plant these particular plants in your particular garden, the thoughts that are planning inside of your mind. If you say, I have a goal, I want to accomplish this, and you allowing this thing to grow, right? And you start some type of progress, by nature, weeds are going to grow. And if you don't tame those, if you don't pull the weeds out in the mind, what's going to end up happening is that it's going to choke out the positive or the good vibrations that you placed in there, basically, if that makes any sense. So to give an example, like at my grandmother's house, may her soul rise in power, what you have is we have a grapevine basically that's on a fence basically. And when we planted, it grew up on a little center post and it spread out on the fence. When I don't tend to it, you'll see the grapevine grow into the bush that's right next to it. It'll just go crazy. Meaning that if you don't tend to the plants or the things that you put inside of your mind, they'll just go anywhere. They'll go to a place that you never wanted it to go to begin with. So that's why you have to make sure that you're taming or tilling your land or your landscaping, basically. And this is the reason why we have landscaping businesses, is to make sure that the land is good, the plants are growing good. So just like that the grapevine in my grandmother's yard, every now and then I go and I cut the vines to make sure that it's straight, because if not, it'll grow it. Like one time it got so crazy, it grew inside of the other bush, and you'll see the grapes coming through the bush and hanging out. Because the thoughts, the plants, it don't care. It's not sitting here saying, oh, that's a bush, I shouldn't grow inside of that. It's just gonna grow. And it's wrapping around the fence. It's just gonna keep growing and growing and growing and growing. So you got to make sure that whatever you plant, whatever plant or fruit that you put inside of your mind, that you're tending to it all the time. You're being sharp on it. But the most important thing is to create the burning desire for the plant to grow, but you also have to have a detachment of outcome. Because if you're sitting there worried about the outcome every single day, you're stunting growth, basically. That's like sitting there trying to water the plant every single day. Like, oh, I want the plant to grow up right now. You got to give it time to grow. And so this aspect takes place underground, where the roots, everybody knows if you kill the roots of the plant.
And that's
like
and that's real quick, and that's dope too, because in that same book, the first parable that we read in Proverbs, no, it's not Proverbs, excuse me, I apologize. Ecclesiastes is what it is, which is a dope book in the Bible. It tells you that there's a time for everything under the sun.
Right.
There's a time to live, a time to die, a time to reap, a time to sow. And that, that book is attributed to the mythical character King Solomon, who's, an important character in Freemasonry. And that, Solomon symbolizes you just like Jesus does. So in that book, he's studying nature. That's the dope part about it. He's just studying the universe. You know what I'm saying? And he peeps that.
Right.
Like, yo, there's a time for everything under the sun. There's a rhythm to this, and that's important. I just wanted to highlight that, bro, because you mentioned that. Like, in the same way that you wouldn't rush your crop sprouting forth when you're gardening, the same thing works with what it is you want to accomplish through the power of thought. You got to know the rhythm. It will come. Don't be thinking like, oh, it should take 80 years per se or whatever. But the point is, learn the rhythm of things. So go ahead, bro. That was just cool that you mentioned that.
Yeah. So the true nature, the true work happens. Yeah. Thank you. The true work happens underground. Huh? Just one spoon. It happens underground. What is the underground? The underground is your subconscious mind, because you can't see. The subconscious mind is the aspect of the mind that we can't see. I mean, you can't see your conscious mind either, but you're acting out the conscious aspects of things. The subconscious mind is programmed. But on the conscious level, you do so many things consciously and subconsciously that you don't even realize. Like, and your subconscious mind is a no-brainer for you to get up and go
Yeah.
brush your teeth. You feel what I'm saying? So it's the
Yeah,
same way.
because remember when you just said that, a synonym for conscious would be to be aware.
Right.
So that's what the brother's saying. Like, you're aware of what your conscious mind is doing. That's why it's said to be conscious. You're aware of it. Like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. If you do something, an action, but there was no conscious thought behind it, you say, oh, I was absent-minded at the time. It's coming from the subconscious. It
Yep.
has to still result from a thought. It just doesn't happen. You know what I'm saying? So go
Right.
ahead, bro.
So when I say that it takes place underground, the root system for a tree expands just like a tree would expand outwardly, but you don't get to see that.
Mm,
And unless you like are in the South or a place where you have land and
right.
stuff like that. I used to live in North Carolina, so I have my experiences with tilling the land. If you try to dig out like the
Mm-hmm.
root of a tree, you'll see how far it goes basically. Like the root system, like it spreads all over. And so that's symbolic of your subconscious mind spreading. And it
Right.
sits, that tree stump, it'll sit right there and just expand. And the root system is the most important.
Mm-hmm.
Because think about it. You're not
And
watering the green leaf of the
and
plant, you're
real
watering the
quick,
roots.
yeah, real quick. The When we apply that to the human body, it's dope you said that. The analogy, we'll see why, like in the Kabbalah, if you understand the Kabbalah, the human body is the tree of life. It just is.
Mm.
When the brother just talked about how the roots spread, if you look at the human body, everything is like an extension of just the primordial consciousness. It's so dope. So we would advise, like, study plant life, study gardening. Even if you got to get on National Geographic, as far as like going to that channel and watching an episode where they deal with how plant life works and everything like that. Because again, what we're dealing with is how there's correspondence. Let me
Yep.
pinpoint that, the Hermetic
Yeah.
law of correspondence,
I
which
was going
means
to get into that
likeness.
too.
Yeah, to correspond means to be like. So the same universal laws that apply on one plane of existence apply on all planes of existence. This is how you can master one plane and then master all planes once you understand how everything corresponds and correlates. So
Mm.
when the brother mentioned that, that's profound. And another thing I'm going to reiterate, going back to what he was saying about the weeds being analogous to thoughts. I don't want to say negative per se, because we're very scientific in masonry. Thoughts that are opposed to what it is that your conscious mind says it wants to produce. Why you think everybody says, I want money, I want to get rich? That's coming from the conscious mind. There's a
Exactly. Yep.
difference between a subconscious desire, right? A subconscious desire, which is a want, and a conscious one. Just like when you look at the sex act, procreation is already, it's a paradigm of the subconscious. It's so universal. Therefore, humans are always going to seek to reproduce. So are animals. They're going to want to fuck, pardon my French, because that desire is in the subconscious to procreate, bro. Why you think it's so strong? Individuals are
Yep.
going out, right? So this is why so many people fail, because their want is coming from the conscious, and they haven't learned how to give it to the subconscious
Right.
in an effective way.
It's
So
basically an
when you
artificial
talked
plant.
about the weeds, or when yeah, so when brother exactly, so when brother Righteous talked about those weeds, gender applies on every plane. male and female, opposite forces interacting and reproducing. It's always going to happen. That's what's going to happen. So on a subconscious plane, that would be it. Like your your um your garbage thoughts. Let me put it like that. I'm being figurative.
Right.
Your garbage thoughts are going to reproduce in the same way that the fruitful ones would. So the garbage thoughts reproducing themselves constantly, and your subconscious will be likened to what weeds are like, because them weeds spread. If you don't get rid of them, they're reproducing in the soil, and them shits is running all through the soil, making it very difficult for you to be able to plant something that's going to actually bear fruit.
Right. Real quick, brother Wahid is he's in the waiting room. He just he said he's ready.
All right, cool. So we're gonna bring the brother on. To everybody, really quick, I'm gonna bring the brother on. Um, Brother Jorge, thank you, man, for sure. Thank you for that 10 brother contributing to the channel.
That's what
All
that
right, we're
is.
gonna let in.
I appreciate that.
In there. Peace of the East. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah,
It's echoing again.
Yeah.
Man, see about in this car there, I forget be running around trying to to get on. I think we lost Brother Majesty.
Nah, he's gonna jump back on.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. I see y'all was kind of going into it already. I probably missed a little bit of it.
Yeah, we still we was just trying to lay the groundwork, so you can do your little thing when you come on. Um, but if you want to, you could go ahead and start giving your spill.
I was talking. What was y'all in general though? General though. I heard you saying
So
something about sowing. You was using scriptures. You reap what you sow, or
so he read from Proverbs and he read from Matthew as well. Excuse me.
okay.
And we were just talking about the subconscious mind, how that's the soil basically.
hold up, real quick. Remember,
Oh
mute
yeah.
yourself when the brother's talking. And then after he asks what he asked, then unmute yourself.
All right, so basically, just to catch you up, we were just talking about, like I said, the subconscious mind is the soil basically, and what you plant in it basically, whether you plant something garbage, as Brother Majesty just mentioned, whether you plant something that's beautiful or something that's horrendous, it doesn't matter what you plant inside of it. The universe is going to give that back to you. That's what's going to grow. That's going to be what you're going to harvest basically. So that's where we at right now. So you can go ahead and lay down your work too.
Okay. Well, yeah. So that, yeah. You want to say this? You want to say the subconscious mind? It doesn't really know the difference between negative and positive. The thoughts that you have, you're dealing with thinking in a negative or negative way, and you're feeling that because it's the thought as well as the emotion that will produce. So feeling, oh man, I think I could do this, and you're actually saying you can't do this. That's like what you're planning. So that's what you're going to get in return. Like when you say you reap what you sow. To sow is like it's one definition to scatter things, and one of the definitions was like what you throw out there. That's what you get back. But also what you plant is what you get back in return. You're thinking negative, negative. You know what I mean? The subconscious doesn't know the difference, or the earth doesn't know the difference. Like you said, if you was planting seeds or if you're planting fruit, you know the difference. The difference back what you plant. You plant a seed, no matter if it's poison, that's what you'll get back. You know, the earth will say, "I'm new," because this is you plant negative or positive. That's what you get back.
All right. Yeah, try to fix your mic too, brother, while here, because it's still echoing, like on your end. So see, like if something's up with the Bluetooth or whatever, or if you too close to like any type of Wi-Fi. You feel me? Or maybe I could you could lower your mic like, hold up. You could like lower your mic. Hold up, hold up.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It sound better.
It sound better?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. Yeah. All right. What else was y'all getting into or whatever? Yes, I came
I
on.
was
Y'all
getting
was
ready to
talking a
touch
little.
on I was getting ready. He brought up, Brother Majesty brought up correspondence, the law of correspondence, and I was gonna touch on that aspect from basically stating that the law of correspondence states that what happens on the above planes happens below, and he already kind of touched into it, but I wanted to
Yeah.
bring it.
Still mute yourself, brother, while here, because you got like some type of like static coming through.
Yeah, I was going to correlate it with as above, so below, in the same sense that when you plant the seed in the soil, once the
Right.
plant starts to show itself, it starts to start blossoming and growing. That's the as above taking place, basically. That's what you with the conscious. That's the likened to the conscious mind is what you can see. Now, underground, like I explained with the root system is basically doing the same thing in reverse. So, and that's the below. So, as above, so below. The plant is growing below as it is above as well, but you just don't see it underneath. And if that root system is not taken care of, your whole plant is damaged. You have no foundation, and that's what makes that's what holds the tree up. The tree
Right.
has to have a good root system, and that's the reason why we till the soil, like I mentioned to begin with. So when we say that, when we speaking about that from a mental perspective, you have to till the soil in the mind to prep it for proper the proper planting process. When you water your garden, basically meaning you are refreshing or reassuring yourself with the thoughts that you want to manifest. If you don't, like Brother Majesty mentioned, the weeds will grow inside of it, and then they'll choke your plant out, and what you'll have is an ugly harvest, basically. So
Right.
that's the above, and that's the as above, so below. So how that reflects
All right.
is when you're planting on a subconscious level, or you're planting in your garden, you'll start to notice your physical life to start to change. You'll start to notice
Right.
different things like, yo, I was just meditating on that, or I just thought about that, or I just saw that in my dream, and you'll see it or a piece of it in your physical reality, and that's how you'll know your plant is growing.
All right. Let me read this too, because we're gonna bring there's a few things we got to bring in the conversation, and we're gonna talk about how this applies to Masonic symbology also, because it's in Masonry, right? All right. There's another parable, and this reiterates everything you were saying in Brother Wahid, and y'all give y'all insight on this stuff also. All right, and Matthew, right, in the Bible, chapter 13, verses 3 to 9, it says, Jesus, and remember again, Jesus is a symbolic character who symbolizes your true self slash potential self. So it says, Jesus spoke many things to the people in parables. He said, behold, a sower went out to sow. And again, that's dealing with a gardener who's planting. You know what I'm saying? Not a person who's sewing with a needle and a thread, man. So he says, behold, a sower went out to sow. And as he sowed, some seed fell by the wayside, and the birds came and devoured them. Some fell on stony places where they did not have much earth, and they immediately sprang up because they had no depth of earth. So he's saying that's deep, bro, from a metaphorical perspective. So he says some seeds fell on stony places where they did not have much earth, and they immediately sprang up because they had no depth of earth. But when the sun was up, they were scorched, and because they had no root, they withered away. And some seeds fell among thorns, and the thorns sprang up and choked the seeds. But other seeds fell on good ground and yielded a crop, some 100-fold, some 60-fold, some 30-fold. He who has ears to hear, let him hear. So that's another parable that the character Jesus gives. And so talk about that, what y'all think about that, like where he, all the parts of it, but it sticks out to me. Well, two things stick out to me in that, because we already know he's talking about the mind, and it tells you that he spoke this parable, which is a symbolic saying, a figurative saying. So two parts in here really stand out to me. It says that he said the seeds that fell on stony places that didn't have much soil or much earth, they sprang up quick, meaning the plant. It did produce a plant quick, right? It says because there was no depth of earth. So I'll always take that symbolically to mean there's no deepness of mind, bro. Like this represents a mind having no understanding. It produces instant gratification if it knows something, you know what I'm saying, about how the law of mind works. It says, but when the sun was up, that's most likely figurative, because we know the sun has something to do with enlightenment, the mind itself becoming enlightened. It says, the seeds sprang up, meaning they did grow into plants because there was no depth of earth. But when the sun came up, the plants were scorched because they had no root. They withered away. And I think that goes to show, at least this is my thought on it, that the law of mind is always in operation. That I know that's correct. The law of mind is always in operation. But in the practical real world sense, you could want to produce something, but if you don't have depth, if your wisdom is not deeply rooted in the subconscious, you will produce, but what you have, you'll lose it very quickly. Like I said, the plants came up, and when the sun came up, they got scorched because there was no depth. You ever see how people win the lotto? Most people who win the lotto go broke, bro. They did have a thought of getting money, and they got that money really quickly, and the shit just went to nothing. They blew through the money quick because they had no depth, bro. No depth of understanding, right? And then the second thing that stands out to me there is it says how the seeds that fell on the good soil or the good ground, they yielded crop. Some 100-fold, some 60, some 30. And if we study the vegetable kingdom as well as the human the animal kingdom, if we look at the plant kingdom, bro, it's fucking amazing. Pardon my French, how, like, let's say we eat an apple. In New York, we grow apples. We're an apple state. You know what I'm saying? Florida is like a state where they grow a lot of oranges. We take apples for granted in New York because they're so plentiful here. We may eat an apple, bro, and throw the shit there, not even eat the whole apple. But if you look inside of the apple, bro, that one apple has so many seeds, bro. That's showing you how much potential for growth is in that thing. So when you start dealing with gardening or farming, you start to see that you could take a seed, bro, that one seed. How many seeds are in it, bro? It's amazing. So when we use the
Right.
law of correspondence or analogy that Brother Righteous was just talking about, the human seed, which is the sperm of the male, look at how that constantly has the potential to reproduce itself, bro. It's amazing. Even though you need the feminine aspect, we know that the same thing goes with plant life. But the point is, it's like when you become enlightened, you start to see that the whole universe is actually in a seed, bro, or in a grain of salt, or in a rock, or anything, even though it seems contradictory. Like, how the hell could infinite existence be in this one finite thing? Right?
Right.
So this when it comes to plant life and farming and gardening, it's the same thing, bro. And with analogy, we see the same thing with the human. You have certain men right now that are alive that have 20, 30 kids, sons and daughters. Some have 50, bro. Scattered all throughout the earth, bro, just from one human. So those things stand out to me. What do y'all brothers think about that?
Go ahead, brother Whitehead. You go ahead.
All right. Well, I was thinking about the part where when you land on the rock, there's no roots to be able to take place. That's why it's not going to last. Like you were saying, as above, so below. It's missing the below aspect. So you need to be able to take root. It's
Mm,
like when you plant something, basically, really two things is needed. And it's kind of the same way when you're dealing with thought. They say in order to manifest your desires, in order to make things happen, you have to have the thought and the emotion. The two things needed when you
mm,
plant is the sunlight and the water. You know, one you could say the sunlight could be symbolic to thought, and the water, your desire, your emotion.
Mm.
And for
mm.
that plant to be on the rock and not to be able to plant, not to be able to grow roots, it can't put its roots down into the earth. Because you know the plants absorb their water, the other aspect that you need through the soil. You know, water run onto a plant, it's not going to drink it. It's going to go down to the
All right.
soil and be drawn up through its
Right.
roots.
Pardon me, brother Wahid. Um, because you touched upon something very significant there.
Yeah, he
We
did though.
laid certain we laid certain groundwork earlier, but now we get into really great parts of this. Okay. We already established that the soil in the garden is likened in the ancient mysteries to the subconscious mind, that which is below, right?
Right.
This is where you have to plant seeds, right? So we established the seeds are the thoughts, the conscious thoughts. We've established that already. So you have the soil, the subconscious mind. Um, in alchemy, that would be called the black earth. That just means the rich earth, bro. Because if soil is fucking black, bro, it's rich. It's but you still got to take care of it. It just if you know anything about planting or gardening, your soil is so important. You could buy soil, obviously, from you. That's typically where you would actually get soil. You'll buy it, well cultivated soil, and the good soil, the rich soil is typically gonna be black as fuck. To be honest with you, right? Same thing applies to Egypt, Kemet, which means the black, and it really refers to the soil. You know what I'm saying? It's not fucking referring to the skin of the people, particularly. It's really not. It's the microcosm, macrocosm principle. So we established, like in alchemy, we call that Ethiopia, the rich, fertile soil of the initiate, right? The subconscious. We call it Ethiopia in masonry also, in the legend of Hiram Abiff. The black soil, the black land, right? Okay. We established that the seeds are the thoughts. We talked about how the weeds are thoughts that are counterproductive to what you want to produce. And now, Brother Wahed talk about the watering and the sunlight aspect. So when you're growing plants, not only do you have to plant the seed in good fertile ground. So we know that if your subconscious thought patterns are counterproductive to what you want to produce, you got to work on that first. You
Right.
can't just be planting seeds in it those conscious things, like when people just try affirmations all the time, but they're not meditating and they're not working on pulling the weeds out, those counterproductive subconscious habitual thoughts. So now when you're really planting something to grow it, it has to have the proper nutrition, which will be water and sunlight. So now Brother Wahid mentioned that. And I like for us to go over that again, because he was getting deep with that. So because we want to apply it, that's what we're saying. This is why we're going in detail. It's not good to just hear it, just like the parable says there. There are those who hear the word. The character Jesus goes on to explain it. You feel me? There are those who hear the word and all that, but he says that certain birds come up real quick and snatch the seeds if it's not put in the right ground.
Right.
And we know birds represent thought. So those are your negative thoughts that come and fuck up what it is that you otherwise would have produced something good with. So all right. So now when you real quick, so when you're growing something, you have to make sure that it has water and sunlight. And Brother Wahid is talking about how you actually do that when you're using the laws of the mind to produce what it is that you want in your life. These are laws. It's going to happen for you is the point. So he made his analogies there with the water, and that's what I want to go into again, because it will teach us better how we water and cultivate those things we want to manifest. Go ahead, Brother Righteous.
So when he was speaking about that, what triggered in my mind was not only realizing that you need water and sunlight in order for this plant to grow,
Okay.
but that is also alluded to the masculine and the feminine principles of the mind, basically. So you need to be able to have the masculine and the feminine. You need to tend to or bring in the masculine and feminine properties into the subconscious. You need to water your mind with the feminine aspect, and you need to give your thoughts sunlight with the sun aspect, basically. So obviously, is the whole point of it is dealing with the topic, basically. Like your
And
mind is
how
like the
like
garden.
how yeah, and how like this too. And we're gonna let Brother Wahid continue and go in, because that was dope. Keep in mind when you're dealing with Freemasonry, Hermetic philosophy in general, water is considered passive. It's considered a passive force. It's symbolized by a triangle that goes downward
Upside down.
like this, because water seeks its own level. It runs downhill. It doesn't ascend. In nature, water doesn't go up naturally. It seeks its level, it'll go down. So that's dope. I had to highlight that. And then when it comes to fire, which would be analogous to sunlight, because fire gives off light. Fire, the nature of fire is to ascend, to rise up. If you look at fire, and it's an alchemy and Hermetic philosophy in general, it's the triangle that's pointing upward to signify an ascension. So go ahead, Brother Wahid, break that down a little bit more, and possibly give an example. Like, that's what I had meant to say. Possibly give an example, like, this is a life situation, and this is how you would apply the water to the soil as well as the sunlight to make sure it manifests.
Yeah, that's good. Like you mentioned that about the fire and the water, which will go back to what I was saying about the sunlight and the water. Like you said, the sun, that's the source of fire. And the way the plants receive the sunlight is from above. And like I was just stating, the water doesn't come in through the top of the plant that's above the surface. It comes in through the roots that's below. You know what I mean? So like you said, it all ties into each other. You said give an example.
Yeah, because remember, go back into that where how you said, the water, or the Brother Righteous agree with you on that also. How the water could be likened to the emotional or feminine aspect, and the sunlight to the masculine, etc. Along those lines.
Right. Okay. Okay. Well, as far as the passive and the active part, let's see. Well, we touch back to that. I just wanted to get back into what we was dealing with, like far as with the water and the sunlight,
Right.
and I would see more so the sunlight probably be more symbolic to your thoughts,
Mm-hmm.
and water to your emotion, your desires, your
Mm-hmm.
feelings. You know what I mean? Because a lot of people don't realize, like you said, we can manifest our own thoughts. We can make things happen with the power of the mind. You know,
Right.
even in that Think and Grow Rich,
Uh-huh.
it says every human being has the ability to completely control his or her mind, and not just really meaning control your mind, but use your mind to make things happen. And a lot of people think, like you were speaking about, the affirmations. They just saying them, but it's basically empty affirmations. I want to be rich. I want to be this, but they don't believe it. They don't feel it. You understand?
Mm-hmm.
And it's a chapter in Thomas where he says, I don't, the Gospel of Thomas. I forgot the chapter. I should have wrote it down. But where he says, when you can marry the two,
Right.
thought and emotion, you can
Mm.
look to the mountains and say move, and the mountains will move. Basically, when they're saying you
Right.
can move a mountain with thought and emotion, not just emotion, not just thought. Because
Right.
like, as far as the that will go to the soil, and
Uh-huh.
what you plant in it is what you get back. So if your emotion is negative, like you want to say I want money, but you thinking I'm really not going to get the money, it's going to combine the two. You're thinking money and you're feeling not going to work. This shit ain't going to work, but I'm going to do it because I said I'd do it. You know,
Right.
that's what you get
So
back.
let's keep this in mind with what you're saying, right? So we don't get off course.
Okay.
And the practicality of it, right? And we'll try to come up with an example, because that's what we want to do also. You know, like, okay,
I
this is
think I
what
got an example.
yeah. All right, cool. So keep the example in mind, and let me say this real quick. Um, with the, like when you're planting, growing a garden, if it was in a literal sense, the watering part and the sunlight, that's a constant. You have to keep doing that, right? For a time. You don't just leave it there on its own. You got to tend to it, like the brother said earlier. So, like, there's also a story in the Bible dealing with Elijah, right? The prophet Elijah, and these are characters, again, symbolizing your spiritual journey. But Elijah, he wants it to rain. You know what I'm saying? Because there's a drought in the land, and he goes and he prays for the rain, right? And remember, this is symbolic. He prays for the rain, so nothing happens, but he doesn't give up. He goes back and he prays for the rain again. The next day, nothing happens. He goes and he prays for the rain again the next day. Now a little bit of a cloud starts to appear. You know what I'm saying? The point is, he repeats this in the story. This is symbolic. Don't take it literal. Apply it to the analogy that we're dealing with. Thought.
Mhm.
So he tends to it, he keeps doing it, and then finally a cloud appears after several days of him being consistent, tending to the thought, what it is that he wants. And then the rain comes, and it comes down upon the land. So go ahead, bro, right? Just as far as with the example.
So the one example that I did come up with was actually an experiment that I went through with myself, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to correlate because I mentioned it earlier in the podcast. The burning desire would be equivalent to the masculine energy or the sun, and the
Okay.
detachment and outcome would be likened to basically being passive, being sure. Because when you think
Uh-huh.
about the feminine, the nature of the feminine energy and it being passive,
Right.
it doesn't stand in worry. Basically, like the moon is quiet. It's this feminine aspect. It's just subtle. It's just there. It's calm. But the sun is shining bright and is aggressive and is active. So
Right.
the example that I want to give is when I was in high school, I was around like 16 years old, and I was just talking to my younger brother about this experience. And he said to me, like, Dad, yo, you did that at such a young age and you didn't even realize it. One year when I was a freshman, I dropped a pass in the middle of a game, basically. I was wide open and I dropped the pass. And, people was dissing me and stuff like that or whatever. But the next year, I had made a promise to myself that I would be the starting receiver for the next season and that I would not drop one pass throughout the whole season. And so what started to happen was I kept thinking about it over and over and over, but the season is not until next year, so there's nothing I could do about that. So what I started doing was imagining what it would be like on the field, catching the pass. Then I started
All
going
right.
to the field every
Okay.
day.
All right.
Yeah,
Real quick. So let's go back to the beginning, because our object is to put this into practice, or to
right.
help, our brothers and sisters to put it into practice. Okay. So soil is the subconscious, right?
Right.
How did you, in that scenario? Okay. What's the seed first of all? Let's go to that. The seed
So
is the thought. So what was your thought again? Let's go back to that. What was the thought that you wanted to become objectified?
the initial thought was to become the starting receiver for the next season, basically, and
Okay.
to not drop any passes in that next season.
Okay. So you wanted to become the starting receiver and to not drop any passes. So that's the
Right.
seed that the brother created,
That I
right?
planted right in the subconscious.
Okay. So he got it. Okay. First, he got it. Let's deal with that first. He got it. Let's not deal with the sowing yet or the planting. So that's his seed, to become the starting receiver for the next season and to not fumble any passes or drop any passes. That's the seed. So the brother created a seed. Okay, so the soil is the subconscious. Now, did you do anything pertaining to the weeds or things that may make the soil non-productive? What was that
So
process like?
anytime that somebody would any particular weed that came up, what I did was provided myself reassurance. Somebody was like, "You're not going to be starting next season. The coach is not going to pick you." What
Because
I did was
remember,
chop that.
bro, real quick, remember that we're using an analogy. Before you plant the seed, you make sure there's no weeds in that shit. First off,
Right, right,
that's the proper method. And of
right.
course, even afterwards, no doubt about that. So go ahead, bro. This deal with
Yeah.
that with the weed thing.
So again, like so, as far as in the beginning stages,
Hmm.
there was no weeds in the way as far as for me to be able to attain that particular goal. But
Okay,
as
all
I
right.
as I started to progress, they definitely were the weeds were growing because you had your individuals saying, "Bro, you're not going to start. The coach is not going to pick you.
All
You're
right.
not that nice."
Okay, boom. So you planted the seed, right? Boom.
Right,
You put this seed into your subconscious,
right,
right? That this is what I'm going to do, become the starting receiver next season and not drop any passes. So,
right.
boom, the seed is planted. Now, what was the next process in terms of watering it, the sunlight, etc.? Let's
So
let's talk about that.
the next aspect was putting in all the work to make this true, to make this particular thought process true. So even
Uh-huh.
at that age, I understood if you don't put this work in, none of what you're claiming that you want can even come to pass. So I
Uh-huh.
dedicated myself to working out twice a day. I dedicated myself to the field and I tunnel vision. I focused on that particular goal and I created a burning desire for it.
Hmm.
That burning desire kept me on the field. I would go to the field twice a day. And this is around the summertime, so I'm going twice a day and nobody could get in my way and nothing negative got in my way. So I remembered what it felt like. The desire was like burning. It was hot. So it was like the
Hmm.
heat of the sun grooming or manifesting this particular seed to grow. It's like I seen the light, but I could also feel the heat of it because I
Right.
knew in my mind when this season comes, nothing is stopping me from getting what I want. And I'm going to do whatever it takes physically. And so that was the work that I was doing in the subconscious, but underground in the shadows that nobody's seen except for like my friends. They saw me put the work in.
Right.
But when it got to a point of detachment and outcome, I can't make the season fast forward. You feel me? I have to wait for the season to come to prove myself worthy. But when it was time for the coaches to pick, after all of the work that I put in, and it was time to prove myself worthy, I was selected as a starting receiver. And not only was I selected, everything that I said that I wanted to do manifested and on record. You feel what I'm saying? To the
Right.
point where people were like, yo, bro, you're nice. Like, you're official. But they didn't understand the work that I put in before that. Everything that I planted in my mind, everything that I said to myself, every reassuring thought that I had, and the burning desire, but the
Right.
understanding that I'm going to have it is mine. And I
So,
claimed it.
right. So in between that process, right, you were doing it like you just said, you were watering the seed and you were applying the sunlight to it, right?
Right.
Of course we know air and all of that, you know.
Right.
Um, so that was that process. So in the midst of that process or during that process, what were some of the weeds that were sprouting up, and how were you getting rid of those weeds? But
So
before the crop came.
so again, you have people talking, which I consider
Hmm.
the weeds, signs to
Hmm.
doubt. Oh, so and so is coming into school this year. He's already nice, so there's no way you could get that because he's probably going to be starting. He's bigger than you. He's taller and all of this. And for me, excuse me, it was a matter of I could put that work in right now and show you. But it
Hmm.
wasn't about proving it to them. It was more so about proving it to myself. That's what I
Right.
realized at such a young age.
So
I didn't go ahead.
so how did you pull out the weeds? Like, how did you get rid of them? So we know what the weeds are now.
Right.
How did you get rid of them? How did you take them out of the soil and
So
stop them from sprouting? Like, what was that process like?
the one thing that I did to reassure myself was basically what we call scrimmages or a
Hmm.
mock game, basically. So I would go out on the
Okay.
field and we would practice. Me and my friends would challenge dudes like, yo, come see me. I'm gonna show you what work I'm putting in. Because you saying that I'm not good, you saying that so and so is coming in and that don't matter to me. Let me show you what I got. And even if other people still didn't believe it, in my
Hmm.
mind, I remember the feeling. It's crazy because I feel it right now as I'm explaining. I remember feeling like, yo, nothing is going to stop me. I don't care how nice you are, bro. Watch me get
Okay.
that starting spot. And that's what I kept doing that over and over, over and over. I mean, literally Sunday through Sunday, this was my thought process. When school
Hmm.
started back up, this was my thought process. Like, yeah, I did my schoolwork, but in my mind, I was like, yo, I gotta get to the field. I gotta get to the field. I gotta work out. That's what I kept repeating over and over in my head to the point that I
Hmm.
became it. Like I explained to my brother, I was like, I wanted it so bad that I became the part. So
Right.
I became what it is that I wanted. And when the weeds showed up, I just kept reminding myself, like, bro, that's nothing. Like, I chop that out of here. Whatever. We're gonna see. I'll show you. I kept pulling them
So
up, kept pulling them up.
did did you use any sort of mental processes to reassure yourself, like to affirm yourself, in other words?
More so that I'm the only reaffirming process that I use or words that I use is just like, bro, don't worry about none of that stuff. You're the best. You're the best receiver. You're the starting receiver. Everything's gonna work out.
Yeah.
We're gonna
I'm saying as far as like sometimes you may have memories, right? Like for example, you see how, like, let's say if you're an actor or something, you on a stage, right?
mm,
In the beginning you have that doubt or whatever, you have those weeds, and that could be fear of criticism or whatever it is, mental,
mm,
subconscious paradigms. And as you go through the experience, you may rely upon memory. Like, okay, you know what? When I do my next show, I smash the last 3 shows. So if a doubt comes in, I may reflect back and say, nah, them last 3 shows, I smashed it.
Right.
So why would I not smash this one? And it
Right.
starts to become what they call confidence. And people gravitate towards that confidence. So
Right.
those type of things in terms of getting rid of the weeds and the soil of the mind. So that's why we
Yeah,
bring up these examples.
that aspect that you speak of was
Right.
developed before I even saw one game that season because of
Uh-huh.
so much practice that I had basically. Because
Right.
you have scrimmages against other schools and stuff like that. So the work that I put in, I was able to
Mm,
see the fruits of my particular labor or the things that I manifested. I was able to see it before the season actually came about to prove
mm,
myself like, oh yeah, we're good. Ain't no
mm,
question about it. I know we good. But that's still not on record. You feel me? The game is actually
right.
on record because that's what they're gonna take
Mm,
the stats and all this other stuff.
right.
But prior to that, I had put so
Mm,
much work in that, and I did so much work pulling out the weeds, just ignoring it. It's like, bro, listen, all right, whatever. My vision was just
mm,
so like, just was it was just tunnel. My
right.
brother mentioned it. He was like, I remember that time, like you ain't really care about nothing, bro. You just that's all you wanted to do, and
Right. Right.
and that's exactly how it was. And I brought him
So
back
you
to that time frame, basically of remembering that how I was
so you
when it
had that
came.
focus.
Right. And then when it came to game time, same
Hmm.
scenario as the last season, same team, same play.
Hmm.
And when I stepped on the field, this is exactly what I said to myself. All right, bro, this is a new season. You dropped the pass last year. You can't go back and fix that. We're catching this touchdown pass. You know what's coming to
Mm.
you. Nothing can stop you. You're the best. As the coach said the play to me, I remember the play, but it was so like that don't matter that because I was reassuring myself, like, yo, remember what we promised ourselves last year? We're going to be the star receiver. We're going to be the best. We're not dropping no passes. So as I'm running onto the field to prepare myself, I'm just repeating that stuff over and over to my head. And when I saw the dude in front of me before the play started, the last thing I said was, yo, this dude don't know I just scored on him.
Hmm.
And then as the play proceeded, I scored a touchdown. So it was kind of just
Right.
like, yo, what just happened? And then it just
Right.
became a regular thing. Like I didn't have to think about it no more. I just did it. So it was
Right.
like, yo, throw the ball to him. He's gonna catch it. He's good.
So
Whereas
basic.
opposed to that, yeah,
So basically, once you manifested all of that and you went through the process, you became a good gardener. In other words, at that point,
right,
it became likened to when a gardener knows his field and
right,
he grows, he produces his crop consistently,
right,
with some level of mastery,
right.
and
So the
then he's good.
example, me giving that example is to tell the viewers and the audience that the one thing that you gotta have and create, obviously, like you mentioned, you gotta pull the weeds out because they're gonna grow, but you just gotta
Uh-huh.
be on top of it by reassuring yourself. You gotta create that burning desire. You have to feel that heat. If you don't, and I said it to my brother, I was like, "Yo, bro, I lost the heat, but I gotta find it
Hmm.
back." And it's easier for a child to do it because their mind is just so
Hmm.
expanded. You see what I'm saying? Like as an adult
Right.
now, I said it. I told my brother, I'm like, bro, I don't have the desire no more, and I lost that. I need to get back to that childlike feeling of being able to want something, create a burning desire, and
Right.
trusting that it's already yours. And I
Yeah.
lost
And
that
we
aspect.
yeah, and we say that in alchemy too. Like, in order to begin the work, you have to work with heated metals. That's what we say. You have to
Right.
work with heated metals, which represents that desire force. You know what I'm saying?
S-
It got to be there.
Right.
And that's why we see that with a lot of people who claim to be parts of these mystery schools. It doesn't get them nowhere because you could pull off that nonsense on social media. You could pull it off and lie to yourself and lie to everybody. In the real world, it doesn't work. You know what I mean? Because again, the tree is not producing nothing. It's not producing no fruit. So, and that's why we see individuals, suffering, like these different parables and analogies given in the Bible and in the ancient mysteries in general. Tell us you reap what you sow.
Right.
You reap what you sow. What it is you plant is what it is that's gonna move forward. So if that's not what's coming as far as what it is that you harvest, then you didn't succeed in planting at all. And that's why we place importance upon all of this. Because obviously it wasn't successful. You couldn't have got the seed in the soil and have been able to cultivate it and this, that, and the third if that's not the crop that you produce. So this is why a lot of the preliminary work and also understanding the whole process, the whole mental process of manifesting and creating consciously. That's why understanding that whole thing is important.
And the other thing too, and I mentioned because I want to shine light on this. This part is very important with this whole subject that we're speaking on. Is I said that I felt like I became the part, like I became like if you would have asked me back then who invented, becoming a wide receiver, I'd have been like, it's me. I am the wide receiver. There's nobody else. So
Right.
with your desires and the thing, excuse me, and the things that you want to manifest,
Mm-hmm.
you have to create a burning desire to the point that you become what it is that you want. You have
Mm-hmm.
to, it has to be that strong and that intense, but you can't force the outcome. You got to have
Right,
a
right.
detachment of outcome. You got to be able to, you have to be willing to let the plant do what it has to do. Because the
Right.
interesting thing
That's
about plants is we don't see them
check
grow.
it.
Like, yeah,
Check it. This is why that brings me back to alchemy again. When the ancient brothers and sisters said the fire of the alchemist, meaning once you become proficient, the fire of the alchemist is a subtle heat. It's a gentle type of heat, and they symbolize that by birds, a bird sitting upon an egg, because that's the warmth. The egg represents that which
right.
is going to be born and manifested. So the ancient brothers and sisters have that symbol of the bird sitting on the egg, waiting for it to hatch, to signify that it is that heat is certainly intense, but it, like you just said, you touched upon it though. It can't be so intense that it consumes you on a conscious level, like with the parable where the character Jesus says, there was the seed that fell on the stony ground and it sprung up fast, but it got scorched by the sun and it withered away. You know what I'm saying? So the alchemists say that even though you have to start the work with heated metals, the type of heat it has to become concentrated. That's focus, bro. It's a focused type of it's a
Right.
gentle type of heat, because if there was too much heat, the egg wouldn't hatch. So the bird applies the heat to it, but it's a gentle type of heat. And
Right.
that's how the mind has to operate in order to manifest these things. I know you were just about to say something dealing with what takes place with the growing is unseen and underground. Talk about that, and then let's talk about the free gardeners, because I want to talk about that before we leave,
Oh, yeah,
and
yeah,
then
yeah.
and then deal with some Masonic symbology with it.
So, yeah, what I was getting ready to mention was unless you take a camera and you monitor a plant all day long, that's the only way you're going to see it actually physically grow. But outside
Uh-huh.
of that, with your human eye, you don't see the growth. You just wake up the next day and say, all right, it moved a little bit, maybe. After a week, you'll notice, okay, it's a little bit bigger than where it's at. What I like to do is I like to mark my plants to see,
Right.
like when I first get them, I mark them to see where they at because I know that I can't see the growth with my physical eye. It's the same way with the subconscious mind. You may not necessarily see these things growing, but there's things that you can do that'll show you. Like I said, when you start to store in your subconscious mind or plant inside of your garden the things that you want to manifest and you start becoming it, you create this burning desire, the
Hmm.
universe will show you the closer that you send out this particular signal, there's a signal that's coming back to match that same vibration and frequency, and you'll
Right.
start to see it. And I don't know if you remember, I spoke about that a couple of shows ago about the penny. I send out a
Mm-hmm.
signal, and now I can manifest a penny like that. I could walk outside right now and find a penny just random, because I have it
Right.
stored in my subconscious. Like, yo, I'm gonna find a penny every day. Absolute in the most red, but it's not just find a penny, but I find pennies in the most random places. I
Mm-hmm.
find pennies hanging on the ledge of the train door. You know the step when the train doors open, you pennies sitting
Right.
on that sometimes. And the
Right.
reason why I do that is because I'm experimenting with the universe to see how this thing works. So now, if I can do it on a smaller level, on a minute level,
Right.
I can do it on a grand scale. And so that
Yeah.
is the whole point. Yeah,
And part of that will have to deal with working with the subconscious, which is something that in masonry, the fellow craft is proficient at doing. But we're not going to get into that right now because that would be a whole subject in and of itself. And it's symbolized in the fellow craft ritual, um, or the ritual of passing, of being passed. So, working with the subconscious is important because everything is interconnected. That's what most profane would call intuition, or I had a feeling. They get glimpses of it. 9 out of 10 times they're wrong, though. You know what I'm saying? Because they not
right.
at the two poles of their mind is not in harmony, but they'll have glimpses of it when you start to learn to work with the subconscious, and you'll be like, damn, something's telling me, quote unquote, make a right turn right here and go keep going, and then you find the penny, and you're like, oh damn, I knew something told me, quote unquote,
Right.
to do this. You know what I'm saying? So it gets a lot deeper as far as what you're saying there with our whole subject, working with the subconscious. And again, that's another topic. Um, let's talk about the free gardeners really quickly, and we're going to talk about some masonry, you, I, and Brother Wahid, and how this is symbolized in masonry, and we'll mark it off when the episode is uploaded. You know what I'm saying? Like
Okay.
at this point, you could hear them talk about this. At this point, you could hear them talk about that, and they'll just click on it and they'll send them to that segment or whatever. So let's talk about this free
Um,
garden thing.
can you in the waiting room? Can you see my second video, my second window, or nah? You can't see it because I got two
Yeah.
windows up here. I got the image up
Yep.
there.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, give me 1 second, brother. All right. I know I saw that.
There
Let's
you
see how
go.
this works out.
There you go. That's the image right there.
All right, put the logo up first if you could. I don't know if you got that in there, or you got the other image with the logo or not, or so just on your
Uh,
phone.
I got the image right here. Uh,
The one that has the emblem. 'Cause this is interesting right here.
all right. Is it showing?
We just see the individuals at this point.
All right.
All right, so this is what we'll do, right? We'll go to the phone thing in a second, unless you could yeah, if you could switch it. So just let me introduce this really quickly because it's important. All right, so you see how in this episode we've spent some time talking about how the mind is like a garden, um, and how the ancient mysteries use the analogy of gardening for the whole spiritual process of evolution, self-realization, self-mastery, manifesting what it is that you want to manifest in your life. Okay, cool. Keep that in mind. The ancient mysteries, the Bible also uses masonry as an analogy, building. It uses it as a metaphor for the same thing I just mentioned, the whole spiritual path. Um, and the Bible also does it. Huh?
We're good too. So whenever you're ready, you can let the screen
All
back
right,
on,
cool.
and I got it up
All right,
there.
cool. All right. So with that being stated, all right, you see how we use literal masonry as an analogy for the spiritual process, as I stated. Alchemists do the same thing, but they use chemistry as an analogy for the whole spiritual process. Well, you have a particular order that's called the Order of the Free Gardeners. And the Free Gardeners are a mystery school. If you're a Mason with some experience, not the social club Masons, I'm saying the real Freemasons. Remember everything that we said. Where concentration goes, energy flows, and that's what grows. You're going to know about the various orders under the banner of what individuals would call Illuminati or the enlightened ones or the mystery schools as a whole. So one of these orders is the Free Gardeners. They're well known. If you don't know about them, it's either because you just started your masonry or you're a social club Mason who's been claiming to be a Mason for 30 years and you're not attracting to your life any type of enlightenment, you know what I'm saying, or any progress. So I'm going to show y'all really quickly, and thanks to Brother Righteous for pulling it up. We're going to show you an image of the emblem of
Okay, there we go.
we're gonna
Yeah.
yeah. So we're gonna show you an image of the emblem of the Free Gardeners, right? So the Free Gardeners is a brotherhood. It's a fraternity, just like the Freemasons. And they have the same prefix to their name. Like we have Freemason. As Brother Righteous stated, that signifies being a free thinker, being liberated in the spirit. So they have the same prefix, Free Gardeners. So their whole spiritual path, and you see how in Masonry we use the building of King Solomon's temple as the main, mythological storyline for our spiritual practice and our brotherhood. While the Free Gardeners use biblical allegories that deal with gardening, like when we talked about the Garden of Eden and how the Bible uses the whole subject of agriculture, farming, gardening as an analogy for the spiritual process. Well, this is what the Free Gardeners do. So the emblem is what you see on the screen, which is the compass and the square. And then they have a tool for reaping. Remember when we talked about reaping? So when you're dealing with reaping, which is collecting your crops, you know what I'm saying? Collecting your crops, and not only that, cutting down weeds in the mind and all of that. You need some type of a blade to do to do a lot of work in gardening. So in the Free Gardeners emblem, you see a little switchblade in the emblem, right? So
Right.
you'll probably see a free gardener if you didn't know better and you walked across them or came across them, and you'll just assume that they're Masons. They are in a spiritual sense because we're dealing with the same type of work. They're just using a different name, but it's very closely related. So that's the
That's
emblem that you
fire.
see on the yeah. So that's the emblem that you see on the screen. The compass and square, just like you see in Freemasonry, the square representing the physical aspect of nature and yourself, and the compass representing the spiritual, infinite, eternal aspect of yourself and nature, because the compass draws circles. A circle has no beginning and no end. So the Free Gardeners, be familiar with that particular organization because it's closely related to Freemasonry. It's just one amongst many brotherhoods involved in the great work. Put up the image of some Free Gardeners if you could, Brother Righteous.
right, I got you. Where they at?
So they're kind of like the mechanics.
Yep. Except, yeah, pretty much. Except, you know, that the mechanics of Freemasons under another name. So the mechanics are actually more like Masons, bro.
Okay, I'm ready. You could accept the request now. It's up there.
All right, give me 1 second, real quick. Give me a second, real quick, to switch mics.
Yeah, if he didn't pull that up, I would have never known that these brothers existed. Which is just dope how deep the craft gets, even on that particular level. Like instead of saying Freemasons, they say free gardeners, but the work is pretty much symbolic and the same, which is fire. The concept is dope.
Definitely.
Yeah, one is
Yeah,
builders and the
definitely.
other one growers.
That's fire.
Yeah.
That's dope.
All right, so the image that y'all see right now on the screen, that's a photo of a group of free gardeners. So if you look at the image, you know, check it out, look at it closely, you'll notice that they have on aprons, right? And if you could see the banner that they have in that photo, it has their emblem, which again is the square and the compass, and then a gardener's blade. So on the ground, what they have, you see how masonry will have the mosaic pavement or the ground floor of King Solomon with the black and white squares and all of that.
Right.
They have the same type of symbology as us, to be honest with you. But they also have it's a green pavement, which represents, you know, the green grass, a garden where you would plant the seeds and produce a crop. So if, like I
Definitely, I can
said,
see
if
it
you,
better.
yeah, hell yeah, it's very clear, bro.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
I zoomed in for them.
yeah, so if a person didn't know about the free gardeners, but they were familiar with Masons and they saw a group of free gardeners, they would pretty much presume that they were Freemasons. As you see, they have the
Right.
white gloves on, they have aprons on. And as we know, that whole symbology goes back to ancient Egypt, you know, that the whole apron symbology. So those are the free gardeners. So like I said, they're a brotherhood that deals with the same philosophy as we do as Freemasons. Same philosophy, free thinking, hence why the word free is in the term free gardeners. And everything that we built upon in this particular episode, that's how they work. You know what I'm saying? That's how they work. That's their philosophy. And the same philosophy exists again in Freemasonry, and we're going to talk about that a little bit before we sign off. So like in Masonry, matter of fact, we could take that image down, or we might put it back up again, you know?
All right. You want me to take it down? All right, yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna take it down there. So we might bring it up again, but in Masonry, like you see in this image right here, this is from the book Symbols of Freemasonry by Brother Daniel Berezniak. But in this image, you see what's called the scythe, right? Which is this tool here. It's a reaper's tool. When you're dealing with gardening,
That's what I
that's the
thought they
scythe.
had up.
Yeah, that's the scythe. If you have a small scythe, it's called a sickle. And you'll see that term in the Bible also, sickle. So the scythe is what you see the Grim Reaper has in ancient mythology. The Grim Reaper, you know, the god of death, he has a scythe in his hand, which is a gardening tool, always. Or like I said, if it's a small one, it's called the sickle. And what you use that for is to chop down your crop so that you could collect it. and live off of what it is that you have grown. So that scythe symbol, represents the completion of the spiritual work, basically. That's what it represents. And in a certain sense, you could say that it represents the physical death of the initiate. Some people take it to mean that because when you physically die, your work on this earth is done. You know what I'm saying? And there's so much symbology involved with that. But the reason I showed that scythe is because, of course, it's one of the highlighted symbols of the Master Mason degree in Freemasonry. And it's a gardening tool. So you see the same concept we're talking about here in Freemasonry itself with the scythe. And of course, like I said, it's also in the Bible. So let's hear like some of y'all thoughts on everything we just said. And then there's going to be another point I want to bring up in regards to how the gardening analogy is symbolized in the 3 degrees of Freemasonry in the way that most people who think they're Masons don't know. I'm talking about so-called Masons having high degrees and all of that. But what are y'all thoughts on that? And then I'll bring that up.
Brother, go ahead.
Let me turn this mic. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay.
All right. You see our thoughts on the free gardeners or the
Yeah, just whatever.
Yeah,
Everything that we just talked about right there. It could be the free gardeners, more of the correlation of the philosophy.
Oh, well, I wanted to touch on what Brother Righteous was saying about, and you was asking him some questions like how did he deal with the weeds?
Right.
Like with certain aspects of that, when you got the negativity popping up from different people, which is correspond to the weeds. Basically, what he was saying, like he just didn't let it affect him. He see a weed, just pop it out, keep on moving. You don't put your mind, like, don't focus on it. You know what I'm saying? You just keep doing what you're doing. Basically, you're thinking positive, and you don't let it affect you. Like in I don't know if you ever read the book, The 7-Day Mental Diet. So
I've never heard
in
of
that book. You never heard of that?
No.
All right. See what I was thinking about. If we could do a giveaway, I give one away. It's a good book. It talks about the mind. He got an example in there of how you have a fire going, and you see the hot embers, floating around, and if one lands on you, and you look at it and kind of entertain it, it'll burn a hole in your clothing. But if it lands on you, and the minute you notice it, you just smack it away, no damage is done, even though it was a hot ember. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So it's kind of like when you do away with it right away, it doesn't affect you. And part of his process for the 7-day mental diet, where you're dealing with the diet, things that you take in regularly, you don't take in the negativity. And he's saying if you come across it, as long as you don't entertain it, it's not like you broke the diet. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Okay.
It kind of much the same way if you're supposed to be fasting and you start chewing on something, and then oh man, I'm not supposed to. You just spit it out. You didn't really break the diet. You know what I'm saying? Because the minute you recognized it, you did away with it and continued on. You didn't sit there and indulge in the whole thing. So that example I thought of, because that was a dope example. Because like you said, if something hot, a hot ember land on you, and you just, you know what I mean, as soon as it hits you, you knock it off. It doesn't do any damage. But if you look at it and entertain it, like, oh man, oh what the heck, you know what I mean? Now it done burnt the hole in the clothing, might have burnt the skin. So if you do away with it right away, it really doesn't have any effect on you. That's kind of like what Brother Righteous was saying. Like if they say something, he just looking at, I'm the best. Like I ain't thinking about that. You know what I mean? Even though they might talk negative, oh man, we got Jackson coming over from the other high school. You ain't gonna be able to do nothing with him. He gonna end up being get first position, and you just don't even let that phase you. You know what I mean? You don't even entertain it. You keep your mind focused. That's kind of like the same thing with the gardening. You see something pop up, you deal with it right away, and you keep on doing it. And another thing you was mentioning the time aspect. When you plant something, it's not going to come right away. You're not going to plant it and it's going to be there next morning you wake up. You know what I'm saying? But you still have to water it. You still have to put it in the sunlight. You know what I mean? You got to put it in the window if it's indoors, if it's outdoors. You got to make sure it gets sunlight. That's a steady process. Meanwhile, it's growing beneath the surface. We don't see it, but it's growing. We're not going to see it until it pops through. But it's growing. You know what I'm saying? But if a lot of people don't see that things are happening, they don't see it growing, and they result right back to what they was doing before. They go straight back. Oh man, this shit ain't working. You know what I mean? They think planted a seed. I looked at it. Man, this shit ain't growing. And then they don't want to water it no more. They ain't paying no attention when it was actually doing something. You don't notice the results right away when you garden. You know, you plant your crop. What they say, April showers bring May flowers. The flowers don't come until May. You know what I'm saying? They're not coming in April.
That May sun.
Right.
Like May
getting the April showers.
The play on words.
That's fire.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yo, I ain't even think of that. Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, it's the play on words by the ancient brothers, you know, and ancient sisters. So there's a lot of wordplay. So yeah, what like as for brother righteous, what are your thoughts as far as like that last portion that we just went through in general?
Well, again, my mind is blown more than anything because when I first
even with like the free gardeners thing, all of that.
Yeah, but then like I said, you know, let alone with being a part of the Blue Majestic Order, Blue Majestic Masonry, where we are learning and applying, you know, the true concepts or the true meanings or symbolism of Freemasonry. Our purpose is to preserve and teach the ancient wisdom of the ancient mysteries of ancient Egypt. But
mute yourself.
Oh, my
bro.
bad. I'm sorry.
Nah,
I'm sorry. I forgot I left it on.
That's all right, bro. Yeah.
The way that, like I said, when I deal with social club Masons, they try to appear as mystical or try to appear as if they're dealing with mysticism, whereas we're here learning what all of these symbols mean. Where did it come from? All of this. It's the same way with the free gardeners. Like my mind is blown because I'm living in this mundane reality, right? This matrix, if you will. And it's like, well, these kind of Masons, like for instance, let's just use Blue Majestic.
Yeah. Let's put that image back up one more time. Yeah. So
like,
yeah, put the image back up one more time. So this way we could it'll give strength to what you're saying, which is dope.
You good now. You can accept it.
All right, because we good. Like if y'all ever read this book, Symbols of Freemasonry by brother Daniel Berezniak, he was part of Grand Orient Masonry. Right? He keep your thought in mind real quick, but it just sparked to me. He tells you something, he just mentions them in passing, the free gardeners, you know what I'm saying, and things like that. Sometimes in the beginning of your journey, go over your head, and then later when you encounter different brothers, you're like, oh, that was dope, man. But brother Berezniak was well advanced in Freemasonry, man, well advanced, true Mason. So yeah, I recall that in passing, he talks about the free gardeners in that book, and go ahead, bro. So that's the image again of the free gardeners or some free gardeners.
If my going rate is this, right? There's probably an individual out there who is under the impression that there's only one style of what we would call Masonry, right? And that's what is presented to you as mainstream social club.
Right.
And at one point, I didn't have this comprehension as far as to like there's an esoteric aspect to it. We're not teaching mundane stuff. Like the motto is not to make good men better. That's mundane. is to
Right.
preserve and teach the ancient wisdom of the ancient mysteries of ancient Egypt
Right.
and all of the mystery schools. Now, when I see these brothers right here,
Right.
what it does for me is like, damn, this shit really did exist. Because I'm an individual who looks for the esoteric aspect or the occult aspects of life. Because I don't care about the mundane aspects. I know they don't mean anything. I want to understand why humans do what we do and how we connect with nature. How do we study nature? Because studying nature is ultimately studying yourself. So when I see these
Right.
brothers, now that I know that they exist, it's kind of just like, yo, there's no limit in this universe. You have brothers who are adopting or not even adopting, who are practicing the same concepts that we practice as Masons, but they're gardeners. And
Right.
then on the front of that, you have a free gardener and you have a free Mason, because we embody the truth of what it means to be free, to be liberated, and
Right.
applying that to the work of Masonry, meaning a Mason is a stone, a person, a brick Mason or a stone Mason, a person who builds, but we're speaking on an esoteric aspect.
Right.
Same thing with these brothers. What is a gardener? A person who tames the land. You know what I'm saying? But they're talking about it on an esoteric aspect, which is why it's so dope to me. So I'm taken aback for a little bit because it's just like, dang. Because if you ask me, your brother Righteous, do you think that there's an organization that's like free gardeners? I'd have told you no. There's no way that's possible, bro. But look, and it's just amazing to me how profound the mind can get and how we can organize ourselves and teach these spiritual concepts throughout the world, basically. So that's what I like about this. Is dope. The aprons are fire, but just the concept itself is even more dope. That's what I like about it.
All right. So that's definitely fire. So now let's I'm gonna bring this up and then we'll hear your thoughts on that and then we'll sign off. Um all right, so in the 3 degrees of Freemasonry, which are the 3 official degrees, the blue degrees, we also have indirect, like we already talked about the scythe and the sickle, right? And how we see that as a symbol of Freemasonry and in the 3 degrees. So Masonry points our mind in the direction of looking to this spiritual philosophy that is symbolized by gardening, right?
Mm,
In other words, everything we talked about in this episode is useful to you as a Freemason, for sure.
right.
Helps you to understand life, right? And to master life. So in the 3 degrees, we have an indirect hint. Remember in the beginning, we talked about what sowing means, which is planting the seed, and what reaping means, which is collecting what it is that you have produced through the seed or harvesting, right? It's a reward, in other words. Trust that a gardener or a farmer feels a sense of satisfaction and reward from successfully cultivating the land and producing a harvest, right? Our whole life is like that analogy. But in the blue degrees, the 3 degrees of Freemasonry, um, what is the what does the penalty? All right, you see how in Masonry we have an obligation for each of the 3 degrees. We have an obligation or an oath, right? And it is your obligation that makes you a Mason, as far as our philosophy is concerned, and that gets deep. So every obligation or oath in Freemasonry, and there are three, has a penalty attached to it, a symbolic penalty, a spiritual penalty. By symbolic, don't mean it doesn't mean it's not real. It's just not real in the way that it looks on the surface. Spiritually, it's real, but in the obligation of the 1st degree, there's a penalty attached to the oath of obligation. What does that penalty deal with, brothers? just in a general sense as far as what is stated to be.
Not being able to speak anymore.
No,
And I
no,
don't
just
know how
saying
far
like
we
what is
supposed to go
said,
into
what
it.
is no, just what is said to be on the surface.
I'm
You mean? I mean, I don't know. We could say that on the video with it.
Yeah, it's because anybody who would petition has to be made familiar with that. We don't make an individual swear an oath that he's not familiar with.
Okay, about I mean your throat cut.
And I already stated it's symbolic. I'm just saying what is the penalty attached to the oath?
throat is cut and tongue torn out.
You
Mute
want to
yourself, bro.
read the whole thing out? You want us to read the whole thing, or just the
Nah,
throat cut
nah,
is good enough?
nah. Yeah, that's good enough. So what you said
Okay.
is what?
To have your throat cut.
All right. What did you say, brother Righteous?
And I added to have your tongue torn out.
All right. So you agree it's to have your throat cut across, right?
Right.
All right. Cool. Now, like I just said, that is symbolic. It's not literal. It's real in a spiritual sense. Now, the oath tells you that if you don't live up to these different points of the oath, there's a penalty that will be incurred, that you will incur upon yourself, right? Which is to have your throat cut across, your tongue torn out by its roots, and your body buried in the rough sands of the sea at low water mark, where the tide ebbs and flows twice in 24 hours. Now, we're not going to get into the whole meaning of the penalty, the spiritual meaning of it, but we're just going to deal with that point of having your throat cut across. Okay, let's apply that to astrology, right? Masonry is telling you that's an important center of development, right? Spiritually, the fifth chakra, or the throat center, the seat of expression. Now, in astrology, the throat in ancient astrology, the throat corresponds to the zodiac sign of Taurus, the bull. Now, without us going too deep into the whole symbology of that and ancient astrology and the ancient mysteries, symbolically, the human body is divided into 12 parts that correspond to the 12 signs of the zodiac. And that was the way in which the ancient initiates, as far as the astrology part of the curriculum, that's how they were expressing to us the hermetic principle of correspondence. As above, so below, meaning that the same universal principles that apply in one plane of existence apply to any other plane of existence, and that everything is interconnected, basically. So that's telling you that the human is a microcosm, meaning a mini universe,
Right.
a miniature replica of the universe as a whole. And the universe as a whole, we would call that macrocosm, which means big universe. All right. And you see hints at that in the blue degrees of Freemasonry, where we have 3 lesser lights, 3 great lights, 3 movable jewels, 3 immovable jewels. There's always an allusion to the hermetic principle of polarity in Masonry. So anyway, so the zodiac has correspondences symbolically to the human body. So in ancient astrology, that throat center, when we just talked about your throat being cut across, to the throat center is highlighted in the Enter the Apprentice degree of Freemasonry. So the throat center corresponds to the zodiac sign of Taurus, right? And Taurus is the second sign of the spring as far as the zodiac. When the sun enters the sign of Taurus, that's the second month of spring. Every season has excuse me, it's the second sign in the season of spring, pardon me, or the second month in the season of spring. So each of the 4 seasons consists of 3 months, right? When we're dealing with astrology. So the zodiac sign of Taurus, the bull, it corresponds to the throat. And when you look into that, you'll find that that's what it was with the ancients. So what happens when the sun enters the sign of Taurus? I'm saying as far as when it comes to gardening or planting.
That's when this stuff starts to grow.
Think more in relation to all of the 4 seasons. Because remember, Aries is the first month of spring. Taurus is the second month. Or Taurus is the sign of the second month, rather. So how does the gardening process begin in a literal sense? What do you do first?
First you plant.
All right, you plant. So when the sun is in the sign of Taurus, which corresponds to the throat, that's the beginning of the process, planting. Remember, you got to plow too, right? You got to plow the soil also. And if you know anything about farming and farming at a vast level, agriculture, you use an ox to plow. An ox is a castrated bull. For people that don't know that.
That's a good point.
An ox is a castrated bull. A bull is a powerful creature. So there's a reason that the ancients assigned these different creatures to the zodiac. It's all symbolic. But when you take a bull and you castrate it, meaning you strip it of its mundane procreative force, it becomes calm. It becomes calm. It's very easy to control an ox. It's not easy to control a bull. So an ox is a castrated bull. So you use an ox to plow. It's still strong like the bull. You just castrated it. So it's not all erratic. You took away its mundane sex force. That's basically what you did. So anyway, when the sun enters the sign of Taurus in astrology, that this is when the planting, all of that planting process takes place, the beginning. So when it enters the Princess degree, the throat center, which corresponds to Taurus, or planting, is alluded to, because that's the beginning of your Masonic journey. The enter the Princess degree, you're planting the seeds. In the Fellowcraft degree, the penalty attached to the obligation is to have your chest cut across and your heart torn out. Right? Now, in astrology, the heart corresponds to the zodiac sign of Leo. That's what it corresponds to. So in the second degree, you have an illusion or an indirect hint at the season in which the what it is that you planted sprouts up when the sun enters into the zodiac sign of Leo. And in Masonry, we say that Hiram Abiff is raised by the strong grip of a master mason, also known as the lion's paw. And that alludes to the zodiac sign Leo, because when the sun enters Leo, the sun is at its strongest manifestation of power in nature. So this is why we say that, metaphysically speaking, Hiram Abiff, or the dead Grand Master, could only be resurrected or raised from the grave through the strong grip of the lion's paw when the sun enters Leo. And that means that your mind has to be in a state that can be likened to the power of the sun when it's in the zodiac sign of Leo, when the sun is raising, so to speak, those crops or that plant life, that which you planted. It's making it ascend from out of the soil and manifest. So in the Fellowcraft degree, the penalty is to have the chest cut across and the heart torn out. And again, that's alluding to the sun being in Leo. So in the first degree, we have an allusion to planting, the throat corresponding to Taurus. In the fellowcraft degree, we have an allusion to the sprouting or coming up of that which it is that you planted. The sun in Leo, which corresponds to the heart. And then in the Master Mason degree, the penalty for breaking your oath or obligation is to have your body cut in two, your bowels torn out, the bowels burned to ashes, and the ashes scattered to the four winds, right? So the body part that's mentioned there in the third degree penalty is the bowels. So when you study astrology, ancient astrology, you'll see that the bowels correspond to the zodiac sign of Virgo. And when the sun enters the sign of Virgo, that's when the harvest takes place. That's when what it is that you grew, you cut it down. You cut it down with the scythe or the sickle, and you store it up because you know the winter is going to come. So that's your big reward from what it is that you planted. That's the reaping, in other words. So you're storing everything up so that this way you could survive through the winter. You can have, abundance, an abundance of sustenance. So in the third degree penalty or the penalty to the Master Mason's oath, the bowels are mentioned. So when you look at the first degree, once again, you have an allusion to planting, the throat, Taurus. In the second degree, you have an allusion to what it is that you planted, sprouting. It's manifesting now. And that's the heart, Leo, right? That's the time of what it is that you planted sprouting up. You see it manifesting. And then in the third degree, you have the bowels mentioned in the penalty. And that alludes to, again, Virgo, which corresponds to the bowels, and that represents the harvest season. When the sun enters Virgo, that's the harvest. So in the 3 degrees of Freemasonry, you have a whole allusion or hint at this whole gardening process that we mentioned, being used as a symbol of the spiritual path. Sowing, manifestation, and reaping. Right there in the 3 degrees. But the social club Masons will never get that. They think they know everything, but they don't know nothing. But it's right there. You know what I'm saying? It's right there, and it's so beautiful, like we said, like dealing with the free gardeners or any of these other, esoteric orders.
Definitely.
Because we share this understanding. It's a mystic tie. You feel me? You got other brothers under different banners that work towards the same end. And then your Masonic path or your spiritual path is going to be beautiful. Remember how we said in the beginning with the Jesus parables in the Bible, how the character Jesus says a tree is known by its fruit. If you see a so-called Masonic order and they not doing nothing but having barbecues and talking shit, but there's a tree is known by its fruit. You know what I'm saying? Going back to that analogy, you don't gather grapes from thistles. It don't work like that. So the tree is known by its fruit is very clear. It's to tell you that you're going to know who's on the spiritual path by the fruit that's produced. So the individuals could wear the apron, they could wear the emblem, they could do this, that, and the third. But if you don't see that, when you look at the caliber of the members, it's going to tell you a lot. It's going to tell you whether they're playing pretend and false flagging, basically. False flagging. They're pretending to be something, or whether they're doing the work or not. So I just wanted to mention how the gardening thing is alluded to besides what we said with the scythe and all of that. And in the 3 degrees of Freemasonry. and how it's hinted at. So what are y'all thoughts on that? And then we'll get up out of here.
I didn't even it's dope that you brought that up. And that just goes again to show everybody how deep this gets. The symbology is rooted deep, and there's different connections that can be made that are applicable to life. But the whole point is for you, this is an observation of nature. So this was a great episode to correlate all of that. Like, so you see how the zodiacs in reference to the penalties of just Freemasonry, but this is all in connection to your mind is like a garden. And in the picture that I
Mm-hmm.
had up, the free gardeners, there's no telling like how they get down as far as their particular study, but
Mm-hmm.
the esoteric aspects are speaking
Right.
about nature. And I'm infatuated with that idea because, like I said, I'm hip to the fact that we live mundane lives. We think that we're doing something important, or we think that we're doing something that really matters. When you study the ancients, you'll know even with them, they study nature. They study nature, everything within it, and they understood like, yo, this is a part of me. I'm a part of this. So I must
Mm-hmm.
take care of it. I must tend to it because I am like this sun. I am like this moon. You know what I'm saying? And embodying these masculine and feminine principles or energies and frequencies within us,
Right.
learning how to master them to transcend polarities. But again, it's just all of it is just is synchronization or syncretism. And for me, it's dope. Even with like the other brothers video, um, he does a lot of videos where he connects the religions to
Right.
Freemasonry, and he'll pick apart how your religion is basically Masonic, but it's hidden right in plain sight. You would never see it because nobody teaches you how to look for that type of stuff. But you caught
Right.
up in mundane aspects because you're planting things in your mind. You're planting poison into your mind, and you wonder
Mm-hmm.
why you can't see these things. You gotta start planting fruit.
Right.
And trust me, the trees last. Like my neighbor got a peach tree at my mother house. Every
Mm-hmm.
year, those peaches produce. That tree produces fruit, and we go.
Right.
We get our little peaches or whatever. We eat them. But the point is, like you mentioned with that seed from the apple, let's just use that. That one seed one day is going to turn into a tree and produce hundreds of thousands of fruits. And it's
Yeah.
multiple
And
seeds inside of it. So think about how many fruits, how much fruit you'll get from those particular
right.
seeds.
Right. And
So
there's another parable that's in Luke in the Bible. Luke chapter 13, verses 18 to 19. Right. Verses 18 and 19. And it talks about the parable of the mustard seed, how the character Jesus said, they ask him, like, yo, what is the kingdom of God like? Like, tell us something to give us an idea of what that's like. And the kingdom of God is also called the kingdom of heaven. And then in the gospel of Luke, also, the character Jesus says, don't look here, don't look there. If somebody tells you the kingdom of God is coming, don't believe them. Nobody's going to say, look, here it is, or look, there it is, because verily the kingdom of God is within you. So if a
right,
person is paying attention to these teachings in the Bible, you're going to see these preachers that are swindling the people, and that's their hustle. It is what it is. They're usually they're co-conspirators in the same plot, meaning the people that are getting swindled and the swindlers. A lot of the people getting swindled want to be swindled because the truth hurts. You know what I'm saying? For them. So they'll go along with it. They'll be like, the rapture is coming, the world's gonna end. You see it happen every year, bro. You know what I'm saying? With preachers. But it's right there in the Bible. It says that the character Jesus says, if they tell you it's coming, or the world is going to come to an end, the kingdom of God is coming upon us. Don't believe these fools. Don't believe them. It don't work like that. The kingdom of God I'm talking about is inside of you. It's within you, right? So, and the parable I was just talking about, the parable of the mustard seed, they asked Jesus, yo, tell us what the kingdom is like. And he's like, it's like a mustard seed. Mustard seed is a small ass seed. You know what I'm saying? It looks like it ain't about nothing. It's a tiny seed. But when you plant it successfully, it grows and becomes the greatest of trees. It becomes the greatest of trees. And when he says that the kingdom of God is like a mustard seed because the mustard seed is so small, he's telling you that this knowledge that we're dealing with here, which is the kingdom of God, self-realization, when you come to realize that you are one with God or you are one with the universe, it's a small seed in the sense that the profane, the mundane, the masses, they don't value it, bro. They look upon that shit with contempt. Like, yo, these dudes got knowledge. That shit ain't about nothing. That's why we could kick some solid science, bro. And if we was talking about some shit like a rapper, you know what I'm saying, or gangs or whatever the case may be, you get thousands of subscribers easily if you know how to lay your word game down. Because the masses are still attracted to that garbage. You know what I'm saying? That's what is big in their eyes. The Cardi B bullshit, the rap, you know, all that garbage. To them, that's what's valuable and it's what's big. But guess what, bro? It's like that seed that falls on the stony ground. It comes up quick, but it's burnt down fast because it has no depth. That's why nobody will remember a Cardi B 30 years from now. Guaranteed. Unless she does something that's really profound. You know what I'm saying? But if that legacy continues where it's at, nothing comes out of it. It's nobody remembers who these people are because there's no depth, right? So the kingdom of God, or the culmination of the spiritual path, self-realization, is like the mustard seed, because the mustard seed is little. It doesn't seem like it's about nothing, and that's how the masses view it. But if you do plant that seed within yourself, it grows to be the greatest of trees. And that's why the initiates of the ancient mysteries stand like giants, bro. We remember them 500 years later. We remember them 1,000 years later, 2,000 years later. Confucius is more well known than, in the aggregate, I'm talking about. In the aggregate, than most of these fly-by-night individuals. Pythagoras, people know who Pythagoras is. Even with you know, literal individuals who claim to be prophets, like the Prophet Muhammad. Come on now, billions of people know who he is. So that says something to you as far as like that analogy that is given in the Bible, and there are plenty of them. But the point is that there's correspondence there, as above, so below, as within, so without. It's the law. A lot of people don't get results because, like I said, they want to live a lie and expect to produce results that are not in accordance with nature. Just like when we talk about moving the mountain, you had mentioned that parable earlier, Brother Righteous. That's not literal. Never think for a second I'm going to sit here and through telekinesis, I'm going to pull the mountain out of the ground. It's a parable. The mountain represents a great obstacle. You know what I'm saying? Something that seems that something that seems like it can't be moved out of your life, that you would like to have removed. You know what I'm saying? But you, metaphorically speaking, when you apply that to real life, it's like moving mountains.
There was a Bible verse. Let me see if I still got it, that I used to read with speaking about that mountain in Mark. I believe it was Mark 11:23. And I used to say it was my favorite verse because it was this. A matter of fact, this was the verse around that time that I said that I was so dedicated to my football journey. Here it is, Mark 11:23. This is what it says
Mm.
though. For verily I say unto you, that whosoever shall say unto this mountain, be thou removed and be thou cast into the sea, and shall not doubt in his heart, but shall believe that those things which he saith shall come to pass, he shall have whatever he saith. Therefore I say unto you, what things soever ye desire when ye pray, believe that ye receive them, and ye shall have them. And when ye stand praying, forgive if ye have aught against any, that your Father also which is in heaven may forgive you for your trespasses. But if ye do not forgive, neither will your Father which is in heaven forgive you for your trespasses. I used to read that when I was a teenager, and obviously back when I was more religious, for me that was it was much more literal for me, or much more so-called figurative. But
Right.
now, studying with the brothers and sisters in Blue Majestic Masonry, because every last one of us, I learned something different from everybody, even including myself. But now when we study together, I read it differently now. I don't read it in that same literal figurative sense. Now I realize that Jesus was speaking in parables, and it was symbolic. And it's stating exactly what we're speaking about now. Once you create that desire and you believe that it's yours, it is already done.
Right.
Because, and that's another thing Earl Nightingale mentioned too, before we put this to an end. Not Earl Nightingale, Jim Rohn, excuse me. Jim Rohn stated this. He states, would the farmer plant the seed in the garden or in the grass without having the vision of the crop already being finished? No. He's like, before the farmer plants that seed, he already visions his crop as already being done. That's the reason why he's planting them to begin with, because he knows what's going to manifest out of this.
Right.
So meaning you got to see it before you actually even plant the seed. All right, what is it that I want? What is it that I want to manifest? Visualize it inside of your mind.
Right.
Then you say, okay, this is what I'm going to get. I'm planting this particular seed. Because you already saw the vision. Now, like Brother Whitehead mentioned, you have to water it in its proper abundance. Too much water is going to kill your plant. So it has to be the proper amount of water and the proper amount of sunlight. And you got to know how deep to bury the seed underneath the soil. Because if you bury it too deep, the sunlight can't get to it. And if you put it up too shallow, you're not giving room for the roots to grow.
Right.
So you got to put it at the right place so the sun can get it, and so that the water can do what it needs to do. And everything has to be in the correct proportion, in the right measurements, in order for you to be able to manifest anything on a bigger scale.
Right.
Yeah, definitely.
Like what you were saying, you have to use. I was saying you gotta use the right formula. You need the soil, the seed, the water, but at the same time, you can't take a handful of dirt, drop it on the floor, take a seed, drop it on the floor, pour some water, and expect to grow something. You know what I mean? Like you said, it needs to be the proper formula. You know what I'm saying? You can't just take a little bit of this and a little bit of that. You have to have so much soil. You know what I mean? You need to be able to plant it so deep. Like I said, with that analogy I just used, you just drop a handful of dirt on the floor, drop a seed on it, pour a cup of water on it. You're not coming back to nothing. You know what I'm saying? But a mess on the floor. But you got the soil, you got the water, and you got the seed. But it needs to be the proper ratio. It's a certain formula to it.
And so
and that
as
far as
go ahead.
Oh no, I was gonna say that when I was speaking about the two thought and emotion, that's the chapter, in case somebody wanted to look it up. That's the Gospel of Thomas, one of the books that was taken out. The Gospel of Thomas 106, and also the Gospel of Thomas 48. It says, when you marry the two, thought and emotion, you will say to the mountain, move, and it shall move. That's where that scripture is at in the Gospel of Thomas. So go ahead and finish what you were saying, Brother Wright.
So everything has to be in divine balance and its proper proportions when it comes to this. So when we speaking about your mind is like the Garden of Eden, remember to make these things applicable, and remember you got to have the right balance. Your plants and seeds inside of your mind, which is these particular thoughts or things that you want to manifest in your life. All of this has to be every part of every step has to be in direct proportion. Because if you're applying too much burning desire, you won't be able to get the things that you want. And like Brother Majesty spoke about, the proper amount of heat.
Mm-hmm.
The heat is gradual. If you put too much heat instantly, you want to burn whatever it is that you want, and then you have nothing. You have to start
Right.
over now. So you got to work your way up, basically. It's the same way with a furnace. When you cut the furnace on, the heat has to build up. And if you stick a piece of metal inside the furnace, when you first put that metal inside of it, it's not going to just melt immediately. And how I watch YouTube channels, and I'm working on getting my furnace and stuff like that to practice it myself. You'll see the copper and aluminum. You'll see how it melts gradually, slow,
Mm-hmm.
because the heat is building up. The heat is building up, and then it's starting to melt the metals slowly but surely, till it gets to a point where you'll see the metal turn into a boiling liquid. You know what I'm saying? And that is hot. You don't want to get you don't want to get that on your skin. Is
Mm-hmm.
that's not something that you could get on your skin and just be like, oh, I'm good. It'll burn a hole right through the flesh. But um, but like Brother White had mentioned with the ashes and stuff like that, if you drop a piece of ash on you or something that's hot, you got enough time to get it off before it actually leaves any type of any damage. But if you leave it sitting, it's going to burn through. So when you live your daily lives, right? Because that's the one thing that we forget to do. Well, most of the profane or the people of the public forget to do is to make these things applicable. When I step
Mm-hmm.
out my door, I'm thinking about how am I going to stand on my square today. So I'm thinking about it as I'm walking amongst people. So I'm studying, observing, and I'm learning how to manifest.
Mm-hmm.
Don't put too much on your load. That's number one. Take your time. If you want to be in a state of observation, I suggest you do that first. Just observe, just watch people. Then figure out, what do I want to manifest now that I made these particular observations about humanity? How do I want to
Mm-hmm.
move amongst these people? Then you start to do that. But the best thing to do is observe first. Take whatever we spoke about here and apply it, because your mind is
Wow.
like that. See the vision, see it as already completed. Whatever it is that you desire, that new house, the new car, the new job, whatever it is that you want, claim it. It's mine. Now you have to take the necessary steps in order to make that manifest.
Right.
Because the saying is, faith without works is dead. A lot of Christians like to say that, and it is true. But you can't just say, "Oh, I want this," and just sit back and just be chilling. Like
Mm-hmm.
for me, like even when it comes to Blue Majestic Masonry, just what we learn. I said that I wanted to learn about God or the God concept or God consciousness, and I started searching for the answer, and that's how I found this particular order. And now it's all synchronized with even what I'm studying in school. Even though metaphysics, we deal with metaphysics heavily. Um, my school is just teaching me about metaphysics from a world perspective. Whereas here we go into that. Just make sure
Right.
that you make all of these things applicable, make them practical inside of your life, and you'll start to see the change. And it's easy for the weeds to grow, but you have to learn how to pull those weeds out as soon as they start popping up, which means that you're tending to your garden. If you're
Mm-hmm.
not tending to your garden, the weeds get to a certain point in length. They're like Brother Majesty mentioned, they're gonna choke your plant. They're gonna choke your plants out. You have nothing. You got to start over now. So tend to your garden frequently. Don't overwater your plants, and don't give your plants too much sunlight, because everything is in divine proportion. And this is all it all happens up here in the temple, because that's what God is.
Right.
That's my spill on everything.
Right. So yeah. So like you said, the key factor there, bro, for sure, is tending to it. You know what I'm saying? So the analogy is pretty much exact as far as everything that we went over. Like when the character Jesus says in the parable, You don't gather grapes from thistles. Like, it's like produces like. So what you're giving your attention to, or what you're letting into your soil, which is the subconscious mind, if that what you're letting into it all the time, which would be likened to, again, that sunlight, the water, and all of that, what you're letting into your soil, your subconscious, on a day-to-day basis, don't expect to let that type of thing in and produce something else. It don't work like that. So if you
Nope.
letting all type of garbage in, people want to have their cake and eat it too. You know what I'm saying? And that applies to everything. Your business life, uh, social issues. You see it, the masses always like, why do we get these results? Why do we get these results? Because you 12 hours of the day you letting in bullshit into your mind. But on, again, from the conscious pole, they might talk about, yeah, I'm about this and I'm about positivity, quote unquote. I'm about progress. And nah, that's not what you're letting into your soil. What you're letting into your soil is garbage the majority of the day. So why would you expect a different outcome? Why would you expect prosperity or success if you're not going through the process? And what you're letting into your subconscious, or the soil, or seeds that are only going to really reflect what you get. Those are the seeds being planted. Garbage. So if you want the proper crop to sprout up, you got to plant the right seeds. And like the brother just said, which is beautiful, you have to tend to the garden. You got to water it, let the sunlight in, but it has to be those things that correspond to the seed, the conscious
Right.
thought that you want to plant into the subconscious. The sunlight and the water, figuratively speaking, that has to correspond with what the seed is. If not, you get no results, and that's why most people don't get them. And then when you start to reap something that's beautiful, which they desire on a conscious level, they become envious and they become jealous. And the parable of Cain and Abel tells you the same thing in the Bible. This is your higher self and your lower self. Cain is your lower self, Abel is your higher self. So what Cain was cultivating, he offered that to God in the story, which again is metaphorical. And God didn't accept what it was that he produced. But what Cain offered up to the Lord was acceptable. So Cain was blessed. Abel was blessed. And Cain became jealous of that. That's the lower self. Cain became jealous and killed Abel. So the same thing applies to everyday life. It has to be in your subconscious. You got to plant the right seeds and you got to tend to your garden. So that's why most people don't get the results. They say it consciously, but when they see the next man producing, they start to become jealous, like Cain, envious, and they seek to stop the blessings of the next man. And it never works out good for them. But go ahead, bro.
um, I just randomly looked at my little tea bag or whatever. I asked my lady to give me a cup of tea,
Mm-hmm.
and I randomly looked at the tea bag. It leaves like little messages on the side of it. Right now it says, "From a small seed, a mighty trunk may grow."
Wow.
And the guy's name or the lady's name is, I don't know how to pronounce this, and I don't want to bomb it, but it's
Uh-huh.
AESCHYLUS.
Right.
I don't know who
So
that is.
yeah, yeah, and we saw um bring you the tea and all of that or whatever, and so that's like synchronicity right there, because you got to ask yourself, like we said, what are the odds that my lady is gonna bring me this tea that I requested, and the
Right.
the saying on the tea, which is like a fortune cookie basically, that type of a tea bag. What does it say again?
From a small seed, a mighty trunk may grow.
Exactly. And here we are talking about gardening. What are the odds of that? So that's how real, that's just a testament to how real what we're discussing today is. You know, gardening and applying that to your life. How real all of these analogies are of the ancient mysteries. What are the odds, bro, that you would have that on a tea bag that you just got while we were filming this episode from a small
Yup.
seed, right? So there you have it. So you could say something, brother Wahid or whatever, and then we'll sign off, man, because we had a good build.
Okay, yeah, y'all pretty much touched everything, you know. That is dope. You just brought that up. Just shows how things still, the law of correspondence, everything's still relating. You know what I mean? Everything you bring to the tea bag, dealing with seeds and planting, and we talking about
Yeah.
mind,
And it comes from the subconscious because that wasn't a conscious act.
right.
Everything
Yeah,
is interrelated and interconnected.
as you meditate, you'll start to notice. I know I notice things just fall into play. You know, things just happen easily. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Without you even thinking about stuff. You think a thought, and then later on that day, something happened. You're like, oh damn, I just thought about that. You know? And I ain't talking
Yeah.
about deja vu or something. You say, you know what, man? Like I'm in the real estate. I'm like, man, I gotta find another property. I have to get out here and look. Prices are sky high right now, but I still gotta find something. You know what I mean? Something
Right.
to flip. Later on, I get a text. Hey, I got this foreclosure. If you're interested, it's not on the market. I'm like, damn, I just was saying I need to find a property. I ain't even looked yet, and one came to me. You know what I'm saying? It just happens like that. Yeah. Could we do a giveaway on the book? You know what I mean? I got a book. I covered it or whatever. Or you want to wait till the next episode?
Nah, it's up to you.
Oh,
If you
I
want,
didn't mention it.
if you want to do
Let me
it, go
grab
ahead.
it right quick. Let me grab it right quick. I had to turn the camera off because I was driving. I couldn't even hold it up. It's the one I was mentioning, the 7-day mental diet. Let me see if you can see it, man. I'm outside. I can't find no light. I'm under the street light. I don't know if you can see that or not. It's the 7-day mental diet. You know, it's a little book, kind of like It Works, but it's deep though. You know,
who's it by?
It's by Brother Emmett Fox.
Okay.
He got a few things out.
So the 7-day mental diet by Emmett.
By Emmett Fox.
By Emmett Fox. And it deals with that. Like basically what we're dealing with, what we dealt with in this episode, or manifesting what you want, creating your own destiny through the power of thought. So
it's about taking 7 days. Oh, go ahead.
So the mute that a little bit because the sound is coming. It's all right. So the 7-day mental diet. So likewise in the past episodes, the first viewer that sends us an email, majestymontanez@gmail.com. Send your email and put 7-day mental diet. You know that's stating that you want the book, and also leave your shipping address. Don't forget that. Leave your shipping address, and we'll ship the book out to the first person that sends that email. Just put 7-day mental diet, or I want the book, 7-day mental diet, and then leave your name and shipping address, and we'll ship it out to you. So go ahead, Brother Wahid.
Right, yeah, that's where I got that reference to, the fire and the burning embers floating around and one landing on you. That came out of that book. So it's definitely about, stuff we talk about. It's about taking 7 days in a mental diet, like getting the negative thoughts out your mind. You know how you do an actual diet when you eat food. It's a mental diet. Take 7 days and not delve into negativity and social media, and just focus on get control of your thoughts. And when negative thoughts pop in, how to deal with them. Like taking 7 days to work on that. That's all it's about. So it definitely corresponds to what we're dealing with right now. That's what I thought about. I said I'd give one away. I got a couple of them left. It's a little book right here, the 7-day. Holding it the wrong way. 7-day mental diet. Dr. Emmett Fox.
All right,
All
cool.
right.
So on that note, brothers, let's get out of here. We had a good build. If you're
All
new
right.
to the channel, subscribe, share the content. We'll be back again, next Saturday with another subject that's going to be dope. All right. So with that, we'll get out of here. If y'all got any parting words or anything y'all want to let the viewers know, go ahead, and then we out of here.
I spoke my piece.
Tune in. Yeah, just letting everybody know. Tune in next week. It's always more to come. Brother Majesty always teaching week after week.
All right, cool, y'all. So with that, we appreciate y'all coming through. You could have been anywhere in the world, but instead you was here with us. So with that, peace, love, blessings on the square. See y'all next week.
Peace on the square.